closer, my child.
Hello, hello. I'm here. I'm glad you guys all are here. It's been a minute since I did a solo podcast. I guess a solo live stream. I mean, it's been forever since I did a solo podcast just by myself, recording by myself. Those are so cringe to do. You don't even know how hard that is to do. Not that I need to bore you with all the ins and outs of my job now, or, as I see it, both a job and a ministry. But I'm excited to be here. Of course, I'm here because Josh and I's schedules have not been able to match up. I've been out of town. He's been out of town. He's got the Modern Roots thing going on, and so he's not always available. So we didn't record when we used to. We used to record like every Sunday, so I'd always have these things consistently awaiting to be posted for Thursdays. But I'm here, and I might be a little bit rusty doing this on my own. So I have some videos, I have some things to talk about. We can do some Q&A, but of course this show is about you guys because I'm here for you. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here. If I wasn't here for the Most High God, the calling that God's given me, that's the main reason I'm here. But of course, how you show God you love him is you love the people. So I love you guys, and I appreciate you guys being here. And we've had a kind of a tradition on the live streams where we do pray. So I'm going to bow my head and pray. And if you guys can, bow your heads. And if you can't, if you're driving, please don't bow your heads. But, be with me in spirit. All right, Heavenly Father, Lord, we come before you humbly before your throne, Lord, and we just ask for your Holy Spirit to fill people's hearts, in their mouths, in their ears, in their eyes, Lord. Help them to see, help them to hear, and help them to speak love and truth, Lord. And we just pray, Lord, that you bless the words that are coming out of my mouth, Lord, that I speak no ill words or no untrue words. Just pray that, Lord, that people are given the spirit of truth here today. And we just pray for love and grace upon this whole audience and those families of the people listening. We ask these things in the name of Jesus. Amen. 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 So what do you guys want to talk about? It's funny because I just watched a marathon of that show Foundation. I wish Aaron was here so I could take him to task. Because, for one, he told me that this show was going to be ended. This third season was the last one. Then I found out earlier this week that it was not actually the last season, which actually might be a good thing. Because I got to be honest, if you guys have not heard of that show, me and Aaron talk about it a little bit on the upcoming mixtape. We've talked about it before a few times. It's a really, really interesting show. But man, I hated the ending of that show. I hated the ending of this last season. Oh my gosh. Aaron's like, you won't believe how they tie it all together and how it all works. And I'm like, was he setting me up? Is that the kind of friend that he is, that he set me up? Like, this is going to be this amazing, like, just total, almost like Usual Suspects, how it all like worked together at the end. And you're like, aha, that was great. No, it was not like that. Not in my mind. Maybe, again, it's just one guy's opinion. And I know it's not a news show, so I know a lot of people probably don't watch it, haven't watched it, don't care about it, haven't watched it in 2 or 3 years. But that's just me. But yeah, I still love Aaron, and I will give him a ribbing when I see him next. If he pops up in the chat, I might rebuke him. Are you a skateboarder? I've never like officially called myself a skater. I mean, I have skateboards. I've skateboarded since I was like a kid, but I'm not very good. It's actually interesting. I forget. I feel bad now. There's a local guy who I connected with on Facebook who's like, he's a skateboarder. He's the kind of guy who does the rail slides down like the long steps and does all the moves, does all the ollies and the kick flips and stuff like that. I could ollie back in the day, but now I have one of those longboard skateboards. I consider myself more of a surfer, but truth be told, I'm a little bit more of a poser these days because I don't check the surf report very often. I used to live closer to the beach, so I used to go surfing more often. My old office was literally like a mile and a half from the beach. So I used to keep a board at my office, kept some trunks in my truck. I had like a wetsuit at my office, and also I'm a little bit I'm not very hardcore. I've never been a very hardcore surfer because I surfed one time, I think in January, and I thought, this sucks. This is really cold. This is like supposed to be fun. And I was having no fun doing that. But yes, I do enjoy surfing. I'd love to surf more, you know. Lord willing, maybe I could go on some expeditions to Costa Rica because I've been to Costa Rica a couple times to just do surf trips. But I look back at some of the vacations that I took. Like I went to been to Cancun like 3 times, and I remember one time people were suggesting we should go see, the pyramids and stuff there, and I was like, "Oh, man, it sounds really hot. Maybe I'll just stay by the pool and just drink drinks and, do the normal Cancun thing." And now I look back and I'm like, "Dang, I should have taken advantage of seeing this stuff, get the pictures, do all the real things." Yeah, but such is the time of life I was living. I guess I said I probably would have had no eyes to see what I needed to see. But of course, if I get a chance to go do those kind of things in the future, I will absolutely take full advantage. But yeah, Costa Rica's got like those weird kind of stone spheres that make no sense. I've never heard anybody give a good explanation of like what they are. But Costa Rica has just vast, jungles and crazy beaches, probably meltology, hidden temples, old world buildings. It's probably got everything. I need to go back. Okay, what is your marathon and half marathon PR? Okay, so my marathon PR was, I think it was 3:03:29, something like that. And I think my half marathon PR was like 1:26. But unfortunately I never got to run a half marathon when I was like in like that same marathon shape. I think I probably could have hit like I probably could have got around 122, something like that, when I was like in tip top shape. But I actually, when I ran the 3:03, I was actually really mad at myself because my goal was to break 3 hours and didn't happen. I made like one of the most rookie mistakes you could possibly make. I did not double knot my shoes, and my shoe came untied, and I felt like such an idiot. So I had to stop and tie my shoe. And then I overcompensated and I ran too far to try to get back up to pace. And then it was a really cold day. It was like a really cold day, and I made some tactical decisions that were errors in retrospect, that I stripped off too much of my over, my outer coverings because I thought it was going to be warm enough. But then I think around 15 or 16 miles in, I started to get cold, and that was bad sign. But 3:03 was still pretty good. I mean, 3:03 still was it was a 6:59 average. So it's pretty good, right? Under 7-minute miles for 26.2. Qualified for the Boston Marathon, but then I got hurt that next winter training season, and I never got to run any race ever again after that. So you know what? The Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away. God bless you, Henry Prospect. So yeah, we could talk about it. Like I said, this is a Q&A, but also it is I advertise it as a JT's mixtape. And I tease this, I want to say the last time that I did a JT's mixtape live, that I've been holding out videos for you guys. I don't know what it is about me. Maybe it is a little bit of a, like, the devil's always saying like, you're going to run out of videos. You're going to run out of things to talk about. So maybe you should hold some back. But so I have held some back. Now, maybe, hopefully I'm not listening to the devil, but you know, I said it on this past mixtape that we just recorded yesterday with Aaron, that every week I kind of have like this anxiety about having like a full roster of videos because, my show is not your typical reaction show, because I know there's a million reaction shows on YouTube where they just show the videos and it's kind of like, huh, that was pretty weird, huh? That was a really good video, huh? And then right to the next one. But like we like to have videos that are, I like to balance the videos with other videos that maybe tell more of the story, and then we flesh it out through conversation. So I like to have like kind of a theme to the podcasts. because it still is a podcast. I mean, obviously, like there's like 2 hours long, so I would run out of videos real quick if all I was doing was showing videos. Okay, Axel Blue says, JT, did you have any strange experience as a kid? Yeah, I guess so. I remember one night I had like a really weird, terrifying night, and I think it was a situation where I don't remember, I think I've ever told anybody this, but I look back at this and I do kind of think about like a very demonic experience that I had as a kid. I was sleeping in my room and I just remember like I could not sleep all night. And I think I was like probably went to bed to with the TV on in my room. And of course, this is back before streaming. I'm pretty old now. You see all these gray hairs that, like back in the day when like the channels would like, they would have nothing on them at a certain time of night. So they would either have like just, like snow on them, like the static and stuff, or they had like, the certain bars that says like the programming has ended. And I remember feeling like really, really, really fearful. Like it was really weird because my parents were great growing up. My mom's still great, but I never had any real reason to like fear for things back then. But I just remember being like deathly afraid of something that night. And I look back and I don't know what that means. And I don't even really know what it means, but I really did feel like that there was some kind of a spiritual thing happening. And it wasn't a good one. It was friggin' scary. So I look back at some of that stuff, and I guess as a kid, like you really don't know what you're experiencing. Like, I mean, you really, yeah, it was like a poltergeist type thing. That's what it felt like. It felt like that there was a kind of a presence, a dark one in the room. And who knows what that means? Of course, you could look at it like that the enemy knows that one day he's going to grow up to hopefully, and this is hopefully what I'm doing, that I'm a force for good for the kingdom. And so maybe this is part of like trying to influence me in all kinds of negative ways back then, put a spirit of fear in me. But praise God, God's delivered me of fear. Doesn't mean I'm not afraid sometimes. Doesn't mean I don't have anxiety about certain things like normal people do. But yeah, and I don't know if that's a good story or not. It was just a weird thing. I just always remember that story it was almost like I was afraid that I would never be able to go back to sleep kind of a thing. You guys ever had something like that? Yeah, it was not fun. It's not fun to relive that. But I'm trying to think what else to even talk about before we get into some videos. It's funny that I almost feel like that I thought I knew what I was doing, but maybe I don't. Maybe sometimes I always think about like that I've had like a kind of a vision of like what I'm doing, and of course I have a consistency of like trying to, put out a couple podcasts every week. And like I said, you have a little bit of a anxiety that you can keep this pace up. But what I've done since I became like a full-time content creator, I don't watch most of the podcasts that maybe would be closer to the content that I make. And it's nothing against anybody else. It's just the fact that I guess when I research my own things, I don't really want to be so influenced by other people, maybe even subconsciously to talk about what other people are talking about. I want to talk about what I want to talk about. And I kind of want my research to be fresh. So I ended up watching like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. And I know people are saying, oh, controlled opposition. Maybe. Baron Coleman. I'm looking at stuff on X. And so I do feel like I'm getting pulled back into that kind of political arena. And I know that's not what people want to talk about here. But it's really difficult for me to not talk about some of these things, like to the big thing that happened on X, like the end of last week into this week, was this whole thing about Dan Bilzerian versus Nick Fuentes, which I thought it was funny that we talked about it on one of the previous mixtapes about is there a connection between Nick Fuentes and the SPLC? And so Dan Bilzerian, kind of famous for being just a big personality. I think he made most of his money through, I don't know. I don't even know how. I know he played cards in Vegas and stuff like that, but he's kind of lived that rock star lifestyle. Then he's kind of shifted his focus in his life. Seems like for the better. and now he's running for Congress and he's going against Randy Fine, who's like the biggest Zionist, just example of like somebody who's totally bought and paid for by a foreign government. And then so Nick Fuentes and him are going back and forth. And I'm not saying like that you necessarily can trust anybody in this space. And I'm actually saying you probably can't. But man, the Nick Fuentes stuff is absolutely nuts to me. It's nuts to me that that people can't see it now, that this guy is so clearly a controlled op. You know, like when was he controlled? I mean, I would say that based on what we kind of revealed, and I made a shorter video, and I'll probably start doing some of this, cutting parts of the podcast up and just posting them as themselves. So it was like a 13-minute clip of us talking about the thing with the DOJ going after the SPLC for fraud, funding kind of the things that would be contrary to the message that they're speaking out against, which kind of makes sense that we said that, you know, it's kind of like big pharma. Like, well, if you sell drugs to treat symptoms, well, maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing if there was things that cause those symptoms. So that's kind of what it seems like that they're accusing the SPLC of doing. So Nick Fuentes, I guess famously, he was at Charlottesville when they had that Unite the Right thing with the protests about tearing down these monuments. And it just so happened that he was interviewed by Time Magazine for some kind of a TV feature. I don't know if it was a feature for their website or something. And Nick Fuentes was like, he looked like he was barely past puberty. He was that young. And he's already got this coordinated message about his brand and everything. And you're like, how does that happen? Like really, when you think about it, so many of these people like Ben Shapiro, Nick Fuentes, even Charlie Kirk himself, these people started out so young. I'm sorry, I don't think that's organic. I think that they co-opt certain people. They might get people that they might pay people to do what they already kind of think. And I really do think that's more often the controlled opposition, is that they get to somebody so young, so early, and they promise them all the things, and they're just going to fund what they're actually doing. And it would be very difficult for somebody to resist that. I mean, like I said, it's kind of like me. Like if I started doing this as a very young man and I did it with, hey, I want to be a full-time podcaster. Nick Shirley's another one where, yeah, Nick Shirley, he's a good example too. Yeah, we'll get to him in a second. Is that if somebody would have said, hey, you like talking about angels and demons and Nephilim, you like talking about ancient history stuff, that's great. Here's a bunch of money. You want to go do that? You want to go travel the world? You want to go speak at events? You want to do all the things you want to do? And you'd say, sure. Like, why not? Like, why wouldn't you say yes to that? Well, here's why you shouldn't say yes to that, or maybe you should be cautious about saying yes, because later these people are obviously backing you, and then there might be slightly kind of shifting the way that you kind of are talking about things or don't talk about certain things. And then one day they say, hey, we're doing this. And then at that point, you're like, you've signed your name on the dotted line. They own you. And they've got so much about you that they know that they could expose you and kind of ruin you. So I think that's how mostly it happens. Just like I think it's just like in the music business, in the Hollywood and stuff, where they take advantage of young, naive people seeking a certain thing. You know, it's like the devil taking Jesus up to the high place and saying, see all these things? You can have all these things. And the interesting part about that story about when Jesus is tempted, the devil is offering Jesus what he was actually there to get. Not in that way, though. Not in that way. And obviously, praise God, praise Jesus that he'd said no, because he would have had to sell his soul. Now, obviously, it's interesting to concept when you talk about the Son of God, like part of the Godhead selling his soul. That's not even really possible. But I don't think the devil even really knew what he could do with Jesus. But yeah, so I think that's the situation that these people come into. You know, they come into agreement with things that they have not quite understood what they're agreeing to. And then they get in deep, and then maybe like a Charlie Kirk situation. It's like, no, you ain't walking away from this. And he's like, yes, I am. And you're like, no, you're not. and now he's not walking anywhere. Unless, of course, you believe he's still alive. But yeah, Nick Shirley as well. Nick Shirley, of course, I really enjoyed his videos when he came out and exposed all that fraud in Minnesota. But when you really think about it, like in retrospect, when you see it in retrospect, you're like, every major, massive account on X was retweeting his stuff about exposing that fraud in Minnesota. And then you had like everybody in the government too, like all these very powerful people in Congress, the vice president himself, and all the people in Trump's cabinet, all retweeting Nick Shirley. You're like, wait a minute, that's weird. Because the truth is, the fraud in Minnesota was not a new thing that Nick Shirley uncovered. It was known. I mean, literally, I want to say that the Justice Department was actually going after some of that fraud. Now, they weren't doing a good job about it, but like this stuff was definitely known. So then I know that Candace Owens has been talking about that Nick Shirley went down to Brazil and infiltrated some gang within like 48 hours. You're like, this total white bread, just like wet behind the ears kid, probably can't even grow facial hair. He's like interviewing guys with masks over their face where they have like M16 machine guns. And he's just like hanging out. Hey, I'm a Mormon from Utah. You want to talk to me? Can I hang out with your gang for a minute? And share it all over the internet? Like, what? I mean, I agree with Candace Owens about that. That's just silly. It's kind of like I was born at night, but I was not born last night. That makes no sense. I mean, you think that if you brought a camera crew to some gang in Brazil, you're probably not coming out with you'd be lucky to come out with your life. You probably get sold into, slavery, some kind of a, essay might happen to you. I mean, like that is just it's ridiculous. Whatever. Do you guys want to watch some videos? You guys want to do that today? Because I do have some videos and I do want to get to some Q&A. I know I've answered a couple questions already, but we can watch some videos. So this was something I teased a while back, Venice. I know. I think the very first JT's Mixtape Live, I teased the story of Venice is incredible. And when I say incredible, it's almost like it's not credible. It's incredible. That's actually what incredible means. So let's watch a video about this because this is it's funny. It's funny. It's interesting. Now let's check this out. I'm sure. Hopefully the stream works fine and you guys can see all these videos well. Wait, you know what? That's not the video I want to show first. Sorry. See, this is why I typically don't do JT's Mixtape Live, is because it's difficult. Sometimes I forget these videos. So I'm going to show a different one. We'll go back to that one. Okay, we gotta go to the true story of Venice. So at least the mainstream narrative behind the city of Venice, Italy.
City of Venice in Italy is a modern-day marvel. If you've ever wondered how the city was built, it wasn't built on stone or on dirt. It was built on millions of pieces of wood. And it couldn't have been any kind of wood because most wood rots underwater, and so they needed a specific kind of wood, namely alder wood. When this type of wood is buried with clay and soaked in salty water, it doesn't decay, it actually petrifies. And over centuries, instead of decaying, it hardens and becomes nearly as hard as stone. And the sheer scale of this endeavor over many decades and even centuries is just unfathomable. St. Mark's Campanile alone is built on 100,000 wooden piles. The Basilica di Santa Maria della Salute stands on over 1 million wooden piles. When you multiply that by the thousands of buildings hosting 254,000 current residents, it is a marvel of ancient technology. If you're wondering why the city was even built, it goes back to the fall of Rome. In the early 5th century, Italy was under attack by barbarian tribes. Fleeing the invasions, people sought refuge in the muddy, marshy Venetian lagoon. And they came to find that the water was a good enough defense to keep the barbarians away. And then, starting in the year 421 and continuing for many years, centuries, and decades, the city of Venice was built, which is why the city of Venice in Italy is a modern day marvel.
Okay, did you guys get that? Okay, so famously, everyone I think knows that the city of Venice has all these canal systems. Do you ever see the was it the first James Bond movie with Daniel Craig, Casino Royale? Great movie. That might be my favorite Bond movie. But the movie ends in Venice, and they show a lot of the stuff, and you see all these kind of almost these balloon type things that are under these buildings, I guess, to keep them stable and level. And they go down into like the foundations of the stuff, and like inside these buildings that are some of them are underwater. It's absolutely insane. It's absolutely insane. I mean, the technology and just the wherewithal to do that is incomprehensible to me. I mean, because so what the story was is that Rome falls, right? So the city, it's like, but again, it's kind of like the city of Rome falls. I feel like that is it's a really problem I have with the narrative about the fall of Rome. Rome is not just a city. Rome is not just a city. I mean, today it is. It's just a city, right? It's just like the city of Rome in Italy. But Rome is obviously an empire. So you take out one city, well, I mean, they got governors and prefects all over the place, right? And they still had the Eastern Roman Empire that was in Constantinople, modern day Istanbul. So these barbarians sack Rome, and these people flee to a marsh, right? The marsh was a defense against the barbarians because a marsh is not really a place that's easily to conquer or maybe travel through, or like bring their siege weapons and their armies and their artillery and their cavalry and whatever else, their clubs and their sticks, whatever these barbarians had. They decide this is a good place to hide out. And then they also say, let's just build a city here. And it says that they built it over many years and centuries. Okay, so again, you're fleeing this barbarian horde that was so powerful that it destroyed the greatest empire that ever existed, right? Rome. And then you go hide out in this swamp, this marsh, and you put all that timber, all that stuff in there, and then you start to build all the exact same buildings they built everywhere. The incredible buildings. It's incomprehensible. It's incredible as in not credible whatsoever. And I'll play that other video that I kind of started a little bit, just showing like an early depictions of the city of Venice. Pretty interesting. Pretty wild, huh? I mean, look at that city. That city, ancient city, old world city, and it's all built on timber. Like the whole thing. Sounds like the snake music. It's funny. this is another reason I don't typically do JT's mixtape live, is because that song is probably going to be copyright, and luckily it's just sound, so I can replace the sound or whatever the audio is for that clip. Because yeah, it's probably going to be copyright. Also, it's really not that good either. But like, what do you guys think about that? I mean, I think Venice is a place that I would probably need to go to. Maybe I need to research it more. Maybe that's why I haven't talked about it before, because all I can really say is that's BS. I don't believe that story whatsoever. It's all made up. But like, why? Like, it's still, the question remains, is why that anyone would build a city over all those wetlands and not have street. Again, you got to think about this. So like, you're talking about, so this is horse and buggy days, right? And they build massive buildings, incredible buildings. They built everything out of stone and out of granite and out of marble. They built all this stuff, and it's got a foundation of basically just wood. And you're talking about like wood again. If you're putting wood in the water, this wood is not going to deteriorate. It's not going to break down over centuries, over 1,000 years. That is absolutely bonkers. I mean, these people were not stupid, but these stories absolutely are stupid. I mean, these stories are ridiculous. Maybe we should pull up some pictures of Venice. Let's say Venice old world buildings. Yeah, let's see some of these. See some of these grand buildings. So like this is a good example of some old world Venice right here. Look at that. Look at all that Antiquitech on the top of that building. Is that not incredible? And you got to think, and all this stuff is just built on top of wood. You build that building on top of a bunch of wood. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to tell you guys, but it's really, really, really hard to believe. I do think it's interesting in the movie Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. You know, I think Indiana Jones, his travels start off in Venice, Italy, where he goes into that old library that used to be a cathedral, and it had catacombs under it. And he found some kind of Knights Templar with a shield that had some kind of engraving on it. And then that gave him a map to Petra, where he found the Holy Grail. There's something about this city. I know in my bones that this city does have some clues to our past. Now, what those clues are, I don't know, other than this story makes no sense. I mean, we often talk about mud flooded buildings, but this place is just straight flooded. The truth is, I really wonder, what if the story is just 100% just straight trash? Is that this city was built so good that when it flooded, these buildings still lasted? What if these buildings go way down and they're not actually built on wood? Now, that's just a guess. I'm not saying that's true, but those kind of look like they might be windows under there. What do you guys think? Look at that. Don't gaslight me. They did not build that building to be like that. I'm sorry, it makes no sense. Hello, Mama Khan. Good to see you as well. Should we move on? Should we show something else? Or should we talk? They built over there is awesome. Yep. They certainly built awesome things. What should we talk about next? I did tease this, so maybe I should get to some of the stuff that I actually teased in my thumbnail. I saw a sister who I'm friends with over on TikTok. I'm still over on TikTok, and she shared something really cool about the Minnesota State Capitol building, which has got to be one of the, I mean, if not the coolest old world building of the state capitol buildings, it's up there. I think I shared that on here. Okay. Oh no. Oh no. Oh yeah, I did. I did. Let's check out that, shall we?
Okay, I want to point out some things that I noticed as I stand here. Just look at this scape, right? Why would you build this curved thing into a set of stairs? You wouldn't. There clearly is a floor. And there is a floor, it's just underground, right? Why would you build these steps this way? There was clearly an amphitheater spot there and an amphitheater spot there. Meanwhile, these are scraped off. Do you see it? Nothing written. On the other side, nothing written. Why would you have, this is like a theater banner, right? Oh, look, it's a lion. Shocker. Remember the Duluth City Hall lion? Remember everything lion? And it's scraped off. Meanwhile, we've got these guys up there. This is the state capitol. How Roman is that? Like, this symbology, tell me that doesn't look Greek. Tell me that doesn't look Greek. Nobody can explain this in the state of Minnesota. Nobody. So just first impressions, guys. Like, why did we build these stairs on this beautiful building? Answer, we didn't. These were added. Okay, isn't that pretty? There's the cathedral. I wish the freeway didn't go through here, but of course, the freeway goes through everywhere. All right. Oh, look. Hilarious. Entrance under the steps. Because they know you don't need it. I'm still going to walk up there.
Yeah, I want to give that sister credit because that's a really good call.
To a set of stairs.
Let's go right here, which she's saying that absolutely, I agree with her 100%, is that when you see over here with that, those stairs are not the original stairs. She nailed it. I mean, that's a good call because that's something that can easily be missed because, yeah, this looks like all this stuff was added at a much later time. Because like I said, it seems normal to us at this point. Maybe not in this audience. Now we understand it. Now we see it. But what you see often is that you have stairs all up to the first floors of almost every old building. Why? Sometimes when you go inside the buildings, you either have to walk downstairs once you get up there because, hello, this is actually not the first floor. Sometimes it's like you go, like I said, even I mention all the time in Norfolk, Virginia, which I believe is 11 feet above sea level. So they don't build basements where I live. I live in the flatlands right on the coast, and we have lots of issues with flooding. But you go down to downtown Norfolk, and all the old buildings have basements in them. Makes no sense because Norfolk floods a lot. And I have another video. For Minnesota. I think this is Minnesota. Like I said, this is why I usually edit these podcasts and release them later, like on a Monday, because sometimes I forget stuff. But okay, check this out. This is a pretty cool one too. Another example of there is what's hidden underneath the buildings is very illustrative of what is the lies. Check this out.
Welcome to another episode of They Didn't Build This, starring this mound that's down here in front of this cathedral that's on top of a mound. Those guys were just next to me, and you see how far they're walking up there. Shout out to Becca Thompson for pointing this out to me. Great information. I've never come and looked at it from this side. You always come from the other side. Those are mounds back in there as well. As I walk up, I'll show you. This is really what got our attention. Just ask yourself, what is that? Trolley, train, whatever. That was an entrance to the mound. This is old world, you guys. They're hiding all this stuff from us. They built on top of ancient civilizations that had been here for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years. Okay, remember I told you this is up on a mound? It's actually a really big step mound. It's like multiple layers to the mound, as we can see. This is one. As you walk up it, you know you're Another mound. It's burial mounds. So to say. The world's getting crazy, you guys. It's so windy that this was not a good video. I'll have to come back. See this? Still climbing this bad boy. Still climbing it. Ancient. What's that there for? Because it goes down. This whole thing goes down. And there's stuff down here. So you climb up this mound only for there to have been another mound, and that's where they put that sucker, because the sun hits the front of that window, and whoever's standing in the middle where that altar is will be like Thor. So these guys were using that stuff to power themselves up, create more power. They were already powerful.
Okay, I don't really believe about the Thor stuff that he's talking about, but I do believe that these old world buildings, even the cathedrals, they were obviously centered to astronomical alignments, probably, maybe even ley lines. Maybe it had something to do with, I know when I had Matt from Cultivate Elevate on, he talked about how they would douse and they would find where water was, or maybe they knew where water was. And I just can't help but think about that cathedral and what could be underneath. I think that there could be catacombs under there. What if there is? What if there's massive amounts of catacombs? Maybe not such like in Paris that famously has like millions of skeletons of people that supposedly died in some kind of plague or something. What if, well, not even what if, it's truth. We talked about it on one mixtape that there is catacombs under so many ancient cathedrals. And I say ancient, I can say old world cathedrals. There's lots of them. And I think that, yeah, I think that's a big clue into what happened to everyone. They died. Lots of people died at some point. You know, that's another thing. Before we go to any more videos, I want to talk about this because as I came on earlier and I was complaining about the show Foundation and how Aaron sold me a bill of goods about the ending of season 3, that's besides the point. What I've watched over, I guess, the last 2 years, some of my favorite shows have been Fallout, right? Fallout is based on the video game Fallout, and it's all about these underground vaults or bunkers where people had wrote out a nuclear apocalypse, right? They had some kind of disaster on the surface, and everybody wrote it out in these vaults underneath. Well, maybe not everybody. And then after that, I watched the show Paradise. It's on Hulu. And Paradise is about, once again, about what's a natural cataclysm that leads to all the world governments firing off their nukes and EMPs and all this stuff. So once again, the surface of the earth is a wreck, right? Then I just watched Silo. Silo over on, once again, over on Apple TV. And Silo is a really interesting show because these silos are like underground bunkers and they go way down into the earth. I think they're like 144 levels below the surface of the earth. And these ones, that show is interesting because the main point of the story is the people who live in the silos do not know their history. That supposedly the rebels had destroyed all their history. So they don't know who built the silos. They don't know when they built the silos. They don't know why they built the silos. All they know is it's dangerous to go outside. But the people, it's like they're looking for relics of the past, but like relics are illegal. And same thing in Fallout, that you have this faction, this Brotherhood of Steel, and they're looking for pre-war relics. But man, those shows, very big budget shows, and they're all about these bunkers, these dumbs, and they all have the same theme. I mean, it's getting pretty eerie. I mean, it is getting a little bit eerie. I mean, of course, this is a thing that we've talked about on JT's Mixtape a lot, about how a lot of these celebrities like the Obamas and people like that, Zuckerberg, lots of other people have been building underground bunkers. And of course, it's our contention, especially when you see a show like Paradise. This is based on them having a underground city under a mountain in Colorado. And then, sorry, spoilers, close your ears if you don't want to hear this about Paradise. Season 2 ends with them saying that there's a second underground city, and it's under the Denver airport. Like, so from my mind, like, that's a real thing. Like, this, I think that's a real thing. I think it's a real thing that either is coming, that they're prepping for, or it's something that's already taken place. That's the more trippy one, is if when the Sixth Seal was open, what if people had been preparing for something like that? And there was underground infrastructure already in place. And some people did write out, like the true apocalypse, the book of Revelation, they wrote it out under the ground. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, again, so that would actually be my preference, if that's the truth, is like Fallout is kind of showing a steampunk, more modern telling of like a story that happened back in the 1st century. Because the other idea is so scary that no, this is coming. Like, this is coming. Like, is this, are the elites of the world, are they prepping for Gog Magog? So they know when they kick off this battle that takes on the camp of the saints and the beloved city, they know what happens after that, right? That fire rains down from the heavens. So maybe some people are knowing, like, when this war starts, you know, when this happened, when that happens there, don't be here. So they're going to be under the ground. What do you guys think? Anybody's thoughts? Is this telling a story that's old, or are they telling a story that's in the future? Or is it both? I guess based on if they are prepping for Gog Magog, it could be a future event, but the underground infrastructure is in place from the last time the earth got the fervent heat moment and the mud flood and all that stuff. Yes, I think yes, both. I think anything is possible. Yeah, I think so. I think anything could be possible in that situation. Here's one that I want to share before the war in Iran ends. And hopefully it ends soon, because, man, I can't believe that. No, not that I can't believe that the war is still happening. I kind of thought that it would be long, and it could be worse, and it could get horrible. But I thought this video was interesting because I think people lack kind of maybe just a general idea of history, at least the history we're taught. Check this out.
So it's being reported that Iran is using inflatable tanks and inflatable helicopters as decoys for the U.S. military. It's kind of cool that society has entered the Looney Tunes phase of combat. In response, the United States has started construction on the world's largest piano to drop over the nation of Iran. Updates as they come. So it's being...
So this guy, you know, it was kind of a funny, it was a funny joke, sort of, that the Looney Tunes thing. But did you know that's not a new thing? Like, did you know that the Allies, supposedly in World War II, they did the exact same thing? Because when they were going to invade Normandy, right? So like the whole D-Day invasion, you know, the Germans were aware that this was coming, and they tried to throw him off the track by like the Allies put a bunch of tanks and planes and stuff like that, and they were all inflatables. Like they did that. So there's nothing new under the sun. Iran did not come up with that idea. I mean, who knows how long that's been. Do you guys remember when they were evacuating Afghanistan under the Biden administration? And there was that really weird video of them like running and banging on the last plane out of what was the city? I forget the city in Afghanistan. And they were leaving. And some people were saying that's not a real plane. Maybe it wasn't. There's also been theories. Many have speculated that the Artemis 2 rocket was actually not made of steel and aluminum and ceramic tiles and whatever else it was. They were saying it kind of looked weird. It kind of almost looked like it had wrinkles, like it was a giant balloon, which sort of makes sense because we know that satellites are suspended by balloons. They're more like satelloons than they are actual geosynchronous and whatever technology that just float into outer space. They float by giant helium balloons. Okay, let's move on. We'll keep it moving quick. I'm trying to think where I want to go next. We can discuss. Oh, here's a good one. So this was one of my favorite TikTok accounts, shows all these old maps. And when you talk about like meltology, the mud flood and all the stuff, and you talk about the Great Fires, this was a really interesting one talking about the city of San Francisco.
Have you ever seen the ruins of 1906 San Francisco? This was after the earthquake. It's really interesting. I find old maps and I find interesting anomalies. So check this one out. Here's another one. This is what everything looked like after 1906. Nothing left, right? I mean, look, the places are just emptied out. I mean, it's crazy. But where's all the debris at? That's what I don't get. Like, where's all the rubble? That's my first question. All right, here's my next question. So you have all this. Then this is Exposition City in San Francisco for the exposition here. But this is in 1912. How? How is that possible in 1912? 6 years later, this is what the city looks like. I'll give you a great example. We were just looking at this right here, which is the same as, let's go over to it, this right here. Look around it, there's nothing there, but when you go back here, it's just all built out again. What? And here's another one. Let's go back again. Let's just go back again. And we'll go over here to, where's the other building I found? This one right here, right? So check that out. There's that one, all the buildings around it. Boom. Let's go over here. Let's go check out the buildings. We'll go over and look at that. There's that same building, right? That's the one that's left. And look, nothing else around it. It's empty all the way. Look how empty it is. But here, woo, 6 years later, we're built up. We're ready to rock and roll again. Make that make sense. It just doesn't make sense. I don't get it. Comment, let me know what you think. Just doesn't make sense. Look at the exposition too. It's crazy. It's all built out and done. Anyways, please comment, let me know your thoughts. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for following. Thanks for being a part of this. Always stay curious. And until next time.
Yeah, what's interesting about that video is that when he's saying, look at these pictures, they're really not, a lot of the old pictures we have are very cartoonish looking. They look like they're not really pictures, which doesn't make a lot of sense because they obviously did have cameras back then. So sometimes the pictures look like you can't tell where the actual picture ends and maybe like an illustration begins. I mean, I think a lot of the pictures, like we've often talked about, that they've been doctored. That Photoshop isn't necessarily new. Photoshop, obviously, on computers is a relatively new phenomenon, but like trick photography and things like that, that's just something that's been around for a long time, where they might have had real pictures and they obviously whited out the skies, and then maybe they drew a man there, maybe they added a man here or there, but the pictures, they look fraudulent. So that's been one of my theories, one of my speculations, that yes, there were great fires. Yes, there were destructive earthquakes in places like San Francisco, but maybe not to the scale we're told. Like certain buildings were demolished, especially when you talk about the World Fairs, which we're told are temporary buildings, even though we don't really believe that here. But I think what they do a lot of times is they have a story of a fire, they have a story of a great earthquake, because when you see the earliest pictures of these cities, they have all stone and brick buildings, grand cathedrals, Roman basilicas, looking structures that are post office, prisons, asylums, orphanages, all the things. So the story of San Francisco is that when they first built it, back when the 49ers went out there, it was all built of wood. So they were just building wood buildings, which that's what you expect with frontiermen and miners who are not stonemasons, right? So then the city burned down. They're like, oh, you know what? It turns out that wood is actually very flammable. So let's build the city again out of stone and brick and marble and granite and all the things. But then an earthquake destroys that. And then they build it again, and they build it better each time. Because it's like once you see the first pictures from like 1870 of San Francisco, it is a full city. Actually, let's look at that. Let's look at a picture of San Francisco. Let's see if I can find one. Let's see. San Francisco. '18 1870 panoramic. Okay, let me see if I can find this picture here. Bear with me, y'all. See if I can find the truly awesome shot of San Francisco. They're trying. Are they whitening out our history? See that picture. That ain't it. That ain't it. I'm gonna try to find this picture for y'all. Come on. All right, well, this is the best I've got. I wanted to get the whole panoramic shot, but this shows you that same image. But if you look at this, you can see clearly that this is San Francisco in the 1870s. And so look, you see this cathedral right here that's got almost a Moorish style. You see another cathedral here. You see all the way down to the bay, and you see, as far as the eye can see, you don't see any wood buildings in this town. It's all brick and stone. You can already see, look over here, you can kind of see, this is kind of small, but you can see the street going up above some windows over here. And what you don't see any people in these pictures. You see dirt streets, and you just see, look at all that garbage up around this old world masterpiece right here. And look, dirty roads, you got all that big old hill right there. I mean, this city is built out all the way. Let's see if we get a better one. Let me see if I can find a better one than that. Yeah, see, here's another one. See all these buildings and look at all that crap in the middle right here. They chose to dig all this stuff out. And maybe that's what happened. Maybe that's the leftovers of some of the removed sediment that was around these buildings. Because you don't build all these buildings like this and then have just dirt streets. So this says actually 1860. So 1860. Okay, so check this out. So San Francisco we're told in 1848 only had 1,000 people lived there. So it wasn't until the 49er gold rush that people started to come out here. And if this is 1860s, this city's like 20 years old. 20 years old. Where are all the wood buildings? I see a whole city. I don't see any people. I see a lot of evidence of a massive lie. So this is the 1890s. Once again, it does not look much different from the other previous pictures from the 1860s or 1870s. And that's 1890s. Look at these buildings. That building looks old. Really, really old. That massive clock tower. Come on. I don't buy it. I don't buy it for one solitary second. Most generations had hard cut defining moment to break them up. However, Exynos didn't. We're Generation X and the millennials. So we're like 1979, 1983. I guess I fall directly into the Generation X category because I'm 1978. All right, let's break up the videos a little bit because I did have this one sort of interesting article because I enjoy talking about ancient things as much as I enjoy talking about old world buildings. But I saw this article on CNN, and I know CNN is fake news, but I sort of believe this story. Check this out. Okay, so it says, here's the headline for the story. Why modern witches are making pilgrimages to an ancient Turkish temple. So check that out. Once again, had to be excavated, I'm sure, and then they probably, this is all kind of recreations of this temple. I'm sure they just put that stuff up there. It says, is it Mugla in southwestern Turkey delivers exactly what travelers expect for this corner of the Mediterranean. Sunlit coastlines, rugged mountains, and ruins of long-fallen empires. Yet beyond the well-trodden attractions, it hides something far less familiar, a place that attracts a secretive, devoted stream of visitors for reasons that have little to do with rest and relaxation. About an hour's drive north of the pretty coast of town of Akyaka sits Lagina, a site that's home to the largest known temple dedicated to Hecate, something like that. I don't know. A powerful Greek goddess associated with witchcraft, the moon, crossroads, and communication with the dead. While the worship of most of the ancient Greek or Roman deities has been confined to history, Hecate or Hecate, whatever, remains a subject of reverence, attracting a global following of devotees, some of whom travel to the sanctuary dedicated to her and leave offerings. Today, the sanctuary and temple make for a fascinating visit. Its large complex scattered with columns and enough structural remains to show that the shape what was once seen as a threshold of an otherworldly realm. For modern followers of Lagina, is more than an archaeological site. It's a spiritual center of their world. It is a temple of scale in the world built exclusively for the goddess Hecate, says Bilal Soget, a professor of Turkey. Puma Kale. Puma Kale University, who leads excavations at both the sanctuary and nearby ancient town of Skranakia. I'm terrible at reading words that I've never seen before. The two sites once connected by a sacred way, a stone-paved road stretching just over 8 kilometers or 5 miles, lined up with fountains, wells, small settlements. This route once carried elaborate religious processions between city and sanctuary. During the times, massive processions traveled this route. So once again, ancient Greek columns. The most significant was a key carrying ritual in which a young girl known as Kalidousius or key bearer would carry a sacred key between Lagina and Skrantoikia, accompanied by a large choir. This key does not open physical doors, explains researcher author Huma Zebek, who's written about Hecate. It symbolizes the ability to move between life and death and consciousness and unconsciousness, old and new. Zebek explains that Hecate was seen as a guardian of the threshold, an inner guide to those navigating personal crisis or transformation. She is seen as an archetype of old, wise crone, representing matrilineal wisdom stretching back 8,000 years to the mother goddess figures found in Neolithic settlement in Katahoyuk in central Turkey. Lagina grew in importance around 88 BCE, or BC as we say it, at the time of the conflict between Rome and the Mithridates, who ruled the kingdom of Pontus, covering what is now modern-day Turkey, while the rest of the region sided with Mithridates. Skranakia supported the eventual victorious Romans. Later, the Romans rewarded the city by investing heavily in the temple of Hecate, establishing the Hecatian Romanian festival, an annual event that drew people from all around the ancient world. It says Lagina is a place of pilgrimage. Modern devotees, such as the author Sorita Dieste, describes herself as a priestess and magic practitioner, visits the site, experience what they say is a place of profound energy. For modern journey, there itself feels symbolic as it involves navigating a modern three-way junction between industrial power plant, 3 towering smokestacks, and an echo of Hecate's role of goddess of the crossroads. How much more is this? Do we need to read? I don't think we need to read the rest of it. I just thought that's pretty wild. For one, I've never heard of Hecate. I thought that to the Greeks and the Romans, the goddess of the moon was Artemis. But maybe this is just another name for hers. But dang, that definitely has got some revelation-looking illustrations here with this. Is this the horde that rides the beast right here? It almost looks like. And here's another image of this ancient temple. Once again, you can see that they clearly have started to put pieces of it back together, but they just dug this crap up and they started to stack stones together. But yeah, you know, it kind of makes sense in the little season that these pagan religions were outlawed back in, what we're told is the 6th century, in the times of Theodosius I. He outlawed paganism all throughout the Roman Empire, and it's back. It's back. Why? So why is it back? Is it back because Satan is loose? Because you couldn't have done this back in during the millennial reign. It's like they would have stoned or burned these heretics. They'd have done horrible things to them. Not advocating for that, but that's just the truth. That's what we're told. So why is it back? Could it be back because the Satan is loose? Satan's out of his pit. Okay, let's watch some more videos. I got some more videos. Let's see. I don't know how many more we're going to get to because I probably need to get to the Q&A, which I kind of advertised before. So I've got plenty of videos. Where do we want to go? Oh, this was just an interesting one. And I struggle whether I should save this for JT's mixtape, but this is JT's mixtape. It's just live and just me. But I thought this was wild here.
This is one of the most thrilling hiking trails in China, and it's not for the faint of heart. Located in Chongqing's Wushan region, this trail starts at Wuxia Entrance and climbs all the way to Denglong Peak, one of the iconic 12 peaks of the Yangtze River's three gorges. The hike stretches about 7.5 miles along a narrow mountain ridge, with over 3,400 feet of elevation gain. From above, it looks like a giant dragon stretched across the mountains, earning it the name Dragon's Spine. Along the way, you'll pass stunning viewpoints like Wenfeng and Guanzhen. The hike is moderately challenging and takes around 5 hours to complete, but the real reward, every single step comes with breathtaking views.
It
looks like trail starts.
Let's take the volume off and let's just talk about that. Who did this? How did they do this? I looked this place up. This place is totally real. This is something straight out of Lord of the Rings. How did they get the building materials up there? I mean, to me, this is some of the stuff that I've seen in China makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, it seems like you can't let your kid go play anywhere without you having like one of those leashes on them. Like, you know, those crazy people who have their kids on leashes when they go out in public. I think you'd be justified if you did it here. That is redonkulous. China is a trip. China is a trip. I gotta. There's so many places I have to go, but I mean, like, some of the stuff that I've seen in China, I can't make any sense of it. Why did Long Duck Dong just come to mind? Because you're racist. That's why. No, I'm just kidding. That's a funny joke. And 16 Candles is probably one of my favorite movies. That's a great one. I enjoy that movie immensely. Long Duck Dong. What a name. What a name. What a character. But yeah, they named this place the Dragon's Spine. I mean, I think it fits. I mean, I think it fits pretty well. I think it looks like a dragon's spine. I mean, what else? Once again, these things are incomprehensible to me. It makes no sense that we don't see anything like this being built today. So how did they do this even ever? I mean, because you're talking about like somebody just says, hey, let's build a city up on the top of this mountain. They're like, wait a minute, that mountain you're talking about right there. They would say, let's build it at the bottom. Because at the top makes little to zero sense. But yet, somebody did, supposedly. Okay, should we do like one or two more videos and then well, here's another one. This is sort of on theme. This is more like feels like a millennial reign type situation. But this one is absolutely crazy.
Is this Turkish monastery built into the side of a mountain actually Tartarian? While the exact date that it was founded is unknown, it's presumed to be around the year 386 and is at an elevation of 3,900 foot. So how exactly did they go about carving this into a mountain nearly 4,000 feet in the air in the year 386? That's nearly 2,000 years ago. And why did they build it so high? Was they trying to avoid some sort of flood, perhaps? Or could the entire mountain itself once have been a structure that has since been melted due to some sort of cataclysm? Apparently it has fallen into ruin several times throughout the centuries. Is that because it's withstood multiple resets?
Yeah, another one. I mean, this place is crazy. Yeah, just look at this. Let's just take in that first picture. How did they build the face of that? How did they put the blocks where they're at? All the way up and down this thing? I mean, so they say this thing is 3,000 foot in elevation. Now, I don't know if that means just because it's built on a mountainside that's obviously already elevated, but I mean, you got to think about, like, so do they have scaffolding all the way down to the bottom of this ravine? It's a demon city. Is there any demon door? Did anybody spot a demon door in there? We'll have to ask Brian about that. I mean, yeah, I mean, from my eyes, I can't tell if this looks like a regular mountain to me, and this was built on the side of the mountain. Now, I'm open to the idea that some of this was melted around it, but it's sort of weird that if all this other stuff melted, like, how did this stuff remain? I mean, maybe some of the foundations were here. Like, is it possible that this part on the bottom is older and they did build on top of that later? But this is supposedly built in 386. Look at that. They built scaffolding all the way up to the top of this thing? Come on. That is pretty insane. That is pretty insane. Okay, what are we looking at? I guess we've been going for about 1:15 right now. So I should probably get to some questions here in a minute. Okay. I got one more video. I'm going to do one more video. We'll do one more. Maybe more than one, but we'll do one more for now. Okay, let's find a video that is cool. All right. I'm just gonna I'm gonna throw it to a sister who's looking into the little season.
Why did an entire empire put Jesus Christ on their money? Look at this coin. It's a gold coin from the Byzantine coin minted over 1,000 years ago. And right on the front is the image of Jesus Christ. Not a king, not an emperor, Christ. The inscription even reads, Jesus Christ, King of Kings. Think about that. The Byzantine Empire ruled large parts of the whole world for centuries, yet their coins didn't just honor emperors, they declared Christ as the ruler. Now connect that to the Bible. Revelation chapter 20 says Christ would reign for 1,000 years, a kingdom spreading across the nations. After pagan Rome fell, the Roman world became Christian. Cathedrals covered the earth, Christian empires ruled continents. Even their money proclaimed Christ as king. But Revelation also warns something happens after that 1,000 years. Satan is released to deceive the nations again. So what if those coins, those Christian empires, those massive cathedrals weren't just medieval history? What if they were evidence of the millennium? Because if an empire once put Jesus Christ on its currency, the real question is, what changed the world after that?
Excellent question. And as I teased it, there might be one more video. That's great. That's great evidence. I mean, literally a gold coin. And I do think it's interesting that the depictions of Jesus are pretty consistent. I mean, I know a lot of people say that he might not have been complected like myself or, the Caucasian persuasion, but he does look the same on all the iconography pretty much in general. So I think that's interesting. I think that's an interesting clue that these people had an idea what he looked like. And obviously we're told that these people lived well after he did. And they rightly proclaim him King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So I got one more video because I've been sitting on this video for a while. Another sister who is looking into the little season. And I want to give people credit where credit's due. And I want to amplify their message. Thank you so much, him's sake. Okay, I'll get to your question right as soon as we get after this.
And like the more and more I go down the tortilla, and like the more and more I I go down the Tartarian time frame of what makes sense to me is the thousand. It's 1,000. The 1,000 missing years. You know, J's in front of letters, and buildings were founded instead of built, and BS like Photoshop pictures of stuff being built and everything, and then making constructions on Tartarian structures, but they never add the same materials that it was built with. So if you built it, you will be able to add materials that it was built with, but I digress. I think that time, in my opinion, is the time that either Christ walked this earth or Christ left this earth and it was still cohesiveness and peacefulness, because now it's just evil motherfuckers walking around with masks on and y'all are believing them. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, she's asking the right questions. I think that evidence of the millennial reign. Sorry for the language. I forgot. Again, these videos, that's why I typically post these things later after I've done a once over, because I forget these videos because that was so long. Yeah, the only problem is the whole idea, even the video before about when they talk about Tartarian. I do think that Tartarian is a name for what the medieval people thought of this region of northern Eastern Asia. And I think they called it Tartarian or Tartarus or Grand Tartary because it was connected with Tartarus. It was like unknown, it was savage, and then there was vicious people that lived there. But I don't think they built the buildings. Okay, let me go back to this super chat because that's a good way to get me to answer because I'll see it for sure. Okay, Himsake says, what do you make of the notion that fallen angels on Earth are as shape-shifting celebrities? Oh, there's actually a pretty big account that will remain nameless on this channel who talks about that all the time. It's funny, we just talked about this on JT's Mixtape. So again, we record JT's Mixtape typically every Wednesday, and then it gets posted to my Patreon on Fridays. So it gets edited today, Aaron sends it over to me, and then we post it to Patreon on Friday. So you'll get, but I will still answer this question because we need to talk about that. Now, we were talking about the idea that stars in the Bible are obviously used interchangeably with angels at times. It talks about in the book of Job that the sons of God are called morning stars. Morning stars, the devil is morning star, son of the day. Jesus says in the book of Revelation that he'll give us the morning star. It also calls Jesus the morning star. So I think stars being sons of God is kind of like a synonymous thing. It's like it goes hand in hand. So we know that Los Angeles is the city of angels, correct? You also have the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And what happens when you get on the Hollywood Walk of Fame? They give you a star. Now, I think that from my perspective, this is more representative of them maybe having the right blood stock, they have that blue blood. They have the generations that go back to their fathers who were angels, or at least they believe that. But no, I don't think that every celebrity is an angel. I think that idea is dumb. I think it's really dumb, and this is why I say it's dumb. I think it's certain people like to, and I won't say anybody's names, but certain people like to basically say that every evil act on this earth comes from a fallen angel or a demon. But what that does is it takes agency away from people in their own flesh to make wrong choices and do evil acts. Because we know clearly in the Bible, I mean, that's the thing. The Bible, there is enough evidence of rulers of this earth who are neither Nephilim or angels or were shown that are possessed by demons, have the agency to do evil on their own. This happens all throughout the Bible. So there's not a lot of examples of them saying like the devil shape-shifted into somebody else to do something. It does say when Judas betrayed Jesus, Satan entered him. But Judas was a man, so Judas was a man and Satan possessed him some way or whatever. But Judas ultimately made the choice to betray Christ before he was possessed by Satan. Correct? Book of Hebrews actually does say that basically be careful how you treat strangers because you could be entertaining angels unawares. So yeah, the Bible does give you indication that this could happen, but not like on a wide scale thing. Because again, like I just said, we talked about earlier in the show about how controlled opposition or people who are working for the enemy, I think what the best way that the enemy could do that is co-opt actual people that you're corrupting them like a little at a time. And then before you know it, they didn't really read the fine print in that deal they signed with the devil. And then they're over to the enemy. But no, not all of them. Not all of them. I mean, it's crazy to think that it's all of them. Because ultimately, this story is about man and the story of Christ and his, God's creation of us. And the spiritual principalities and spirits play a role, but no, they're not the stars of this story. Christ is the star, and it's really about us. But that being said, we've talked about it a lot on this podcast about the idea that the devil could be pretending to be a man. Kind of like in the Rings of Power, like Sauron is shown to be this glorified elf, and he could be a man when he wants to be. I think that happens, but no, not to the scale of like it being literally every famous person Because then you're talking about like who's famous enough to be considered it's one of them. Like your favorite YouTuber, it could be me, right? Like like literally a crazy person on the internet has accused, I think, Moon Henry and myself of maybe either being Masons or fallen angels. That's crazy. Like, what I'm talking about? Like, that's actually bananas to say that. But I mean, of course, that's what the enemy would also do, is that he would try to pit truthers, right, against each other, right? Like, so they're like doing like the Spider-Man meme. Actually, you're a Mason. Actually, you're a fallen angel. It's like you're running out of material because this is like all you've got. Like if your only tool is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. Bang. So all you're doing is hitting things with a sledgehammer, and you're not getting any truth doing that. Some of these issues, there's some gray areas, and there's some. This story involves people. People can be corrupt. People can be evil. Lots of them are. I mean, not that I need to tell you guys that, but absolutely. Okay, so we've got a lot of questions in the Q&A, and I'm sure I'm not going to get to all of them. I'm going to do my best to run through some of them, though. Let me switch over to I'll share my screen with y'all, and I'll read the questions with y'all. I did a quick glance over them, but I have not read all of them. So, okay. Mrs. Saturn 1792, I love your authenticity. That's not a question, but I'm gonna read it because that's a very kind compliment. Thank you very much. Ethan Keating 1644, how do you balance conspiracy theories with raising children? Which one should they know and not know? Well, I guess that's kind of an individual thing. You definitely have to know your kids. I know when I first started on this journey, this truth journey, I started to unravel lots of the lies, and I maybe overshared with my kids a little bit because I was trying to point out symbolism in movies and stuff because that's my thing for the most part. But that being said, eventually they started to see it as like white noise. It started to be like, I probably sounded like the Satanic Panic, like moms from the 80s. I started to sound like the church lady. Could it be Satan? And it wasn't that I was wrong. It's just that eventually you're going to get tuned out. So, yes, I think that it's important to kind of share the truth with them, and as much as they can take. You don't want to go down like the deepest, darkest rabbit holes with certain people. Like you want to be able to share things that they're ready to handle, and at the age where it's appropriate. So yeah, no, very true. I mean, I think that you have to be. I think as a well-rounded person, father, parent, mother, father, brother, friend, you have to be relatable to them. You have to be you kind of have to be normal enough when you say things to them about these things, they take you more serious. You know, it's kind of an example of somebody when they talk about every detail in their life being so absolutely insane. Eventually, nothing seems insane that they tell you because, again, if every day's crazy, no days are crazy. So when you decide to point something out, maybe make sure that it's kind of important. Or again, like you share a little bit and you know when, okay, this message is not actually, no more, no more seeding is necessary today. No more watering is necessary. So that is up to you as a parent. Pray about it, and then be may God go with you in this your conversations. Okay, Test the Spirit says, can you please start a Bible study where you can go through verse by verse? It would be so helpful. That's a lot. That's a lot. You know, I did think about this, that I would love at some point to do this, but I mean, I love Bible studies and I love sharing stuff. And I love that when Josh and I get together, we can do Bible studies together, but it's very difficult. It's kind of like that, you know, I read my Bible every day. And of course, I've been reading my Lexham Septuagint, which I get no money if you buy one of these, but you can get one of these on Amazon. And I've been doing my studies through that. And in a perfect world, I'd be able to kind of read with you as I read it. But I mean, you really think about it, like this is my personal time, like going into God's word. And if, you know, like some things are personal, right? Like sometimes like I have to like be able to be in the mindset where I'm like, I'm reading, I'm meditating on it. Sometimes I look things up as I'm reading it myself. And so it's more helpful that I share afterwards. I mean, maybe there's a day that's coming that we could like say, "Hey, we're going to tackle this book." Like, and I want everybody to read at home, right? Like we'll say like, "Hey, we're going to read the first 2 chapters of Genesis," right? And then later we could do something where we already had all read it ourselves. And then we go back through it. And then it would be fun. I mean, this would be something I would enjoy to go back through with other people who have read the same thing as me and then say, hey, what stood out to you? What have you learned? Have you made any connections with this? What is God telling you? That would be great. But time being an issue, unfortunately, we live in this dimension where time is actually a major factor. I would love to start doing that. The other thing that somebody suggested is, I think we were talking in the live chat, the last JT's mixtape, they told me that they had bought that Antiquities in Discoveries of the West, American Antiquities and Discoveries of the West by Josiah Priest. So Brian turned me on to that book. I've been reading it. I'm almost done. They said they got it. I know that like Candace Owens, she has a book club, and I know she has like a book club thing like every Friday on her show. That would be fun. I think that would be good because I need, excuse me. That would be fun because I need somebody to help me be accountable to reading because I wasted so much time watching TV shows today that I tried to read a lot. I'm trying to read more. So if we did take it on ourselves to have like a book club, we could read, you know, like I said, it would help me stay consistent on reading because when I finish this book, I would have another book. Candace Owens is just who I mentioned because I know she has one of these. I'm just saying, like, she's obviously not the only one that has a book club, but maybe that could be something for like a members only thing because it would have to be kind of smaller. But yeah, I think that's a great idea, honestly. Okay, so Erica Rachel 8964. How do you teach your kids about history and science when you're learning that a lot of it's taught in school is not true? That's a great question. I mean, I think that my kids go to school and a couple of the kids are homeschooled. And when we start to talk about certain things, we kind of tell them what's true versus what the book says and what the tests are going to say. I mean, I guess the main thing you could do is that you homeschool them. Now, not everyone has that option. But yeah, we do know at this point that the stuff they're teaching them in like the modern schools, there's tons and tons of lies. So you have to factor that in, obviously, like where you're sending your kid to school. I mean, yeah, like schooling, private schools are expensive, but even the private Christian schools are still going to be teaching a lot of the consensus science in history to them. But you just have to let people know that, hey, you know what you're learning about is lots of theories that are presented as facts. And so the most important thing you could teach your kid is to be a critical thinker, to be the kind of kid that asks lots of questions. And so then they maybe come to you for answers to certain questions. You tell them, hey, this is what I've learned. I know this is what's going to be on your test, but here's what I've learned. And get them to ask the important questions that we asked ourselves. Okay, Kelly Jesus 6468 says, I think yours is the most worthwhile show for every reason, and I make sure I don't miss any of them. Thank you. Thank you. Not a question, another compliment. Thank you very much. Okay, Pharma Dibble. Nice. I remember to watch your live stream you did so long ago. You were so nice with questions for young believers I had. I think people will enjoy it. Oh, thank you. Appreciate your work, says Matthew Howard. Seth Wilson, 4283 says, would you recommend the Ethiopian Bible? Oh, first of all, thank you, Trish Jarrett. I'll say I'm so grateful to found your channel. Appreciate all that you do. Well, God bless you, sister. Appreciate that. Appreciate the super chat. There's a heart. Okay, so Seth Wilson asked about the Ethiopian Bible. It's interesting because I just had a friend, kind of a friend from many years ago. He's a real estate agent, and we've been looking at houses, and it's not going well so far. But my friend who was a real estate agent reached back out to me. He said, hey, I've heard that the Ethiopian Bible has a lot more books that our Bibles don't have. Is that true? And I said, or is that BS? I said, no, that's absolutely true. The Ethiopian Bible has 88 books. The modern Bibles have 66. What I told him was that, for one, first off, if you say that, should I look into the Ethiopian Bible? Yes. I think the Ethiopian Bible would probably be very, very good. But I would say that at the same time, a lot of the books that are missing are in here. They're in the Lexham Septuagint. So I'm not exactly sure how many books are in this one, but way more than this is not the full Bible. This is your Old Testament. This is the Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Old Testament. So if you look into this, it's got a bunch of books like it's got 1st through 4th Maccabees. It's got the end of Daniel, which is called Bel and the Dragon. It's got Baruch in it. It's got let's see what else. It's got Tobit. It's got the Wisdom of Sirach. It's got Ecclesiasticus in here, I believe. It's got 2nd Esdras in here. It's got, what else has it got? This one actually has the Book of Enoch in it as well, but I don't think that the Book of Enoch is in your regular, it's not in your regular Bible, but yeah, Enoch is also in the Ethiopian Bible. Oh, it's got Odes. It's got Susanna. Yeah, it's got some books in here. So if you could definitely check out the Ethiopian Bible. I've not seen a version that I don't know anybody who's got the Ethiopian Bible, to be honest. But yeah, I would say that I'd encourage you to check it out. Crispy Chickens, God bless you. Have you ever thought that Mount Rushmore not being carved out of when they say it was, in the figures in the rock being people from more ancient time? Yeah, we talked about that on one of these episodes of JT's Mixtape, that if you don't really believe the history about the 1800s, well, the story about Mount Rushmore can't really be true, right? So you kind of have to believe that, yeah, those faces, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt, and also Abraham Lincoln. See, Teddy Roosevelt is not that old. You know what I mean? What was Teddy Roosevelt? Was he president in the 19 something? Yeah, like 19 teens or something when he's president. I mean, That's what makes it hard to it's hard to say for sure, but yeah, like the story about how that these men carved out Mount Rushmore in what seems like a very short amount of time, because I want to say they've been working on a a another head on a different mountain. And what is it? It was a who was the Indian they're doing? Do you guys know? Who is it? I want to say Tonto, but I know it's not Tonto. I think it's who was it? Who was the skull they stole in Skull and Bones? Supposedly, what was it? Prescott Bush stole the skull of. You guys know who I'm talking about? Who's the famous Indian that he stole? I gotta look that up now. Let me see. Let me go to Mount Rushmore. Okay, new carving Mount Rushmore. Okay, it is Crazy Horse. That's not who exactly. Oh yeah, Geronimo. Yeah, right, Geronimo. I knew it was something like Tonto, but yeah, here's we got this image of. Wait, no, sorry, I gotta stop sharing this. Share this other thing. I know they didn't carve out the Lone Ranger's sidekick. But yeah, Crazy Horse, and I want to say they've been working on this sucker for. Like, oh yeah, this is it right here. It's the side view of Crazy Horse sculpture, and the work on this began in 1948, and when the face was dedicated in 1998. So this head over here took 50 years to carve. 50 years. Like, so what does that tell you? I mean, what it tells me is that doesn't make any sense. Let me see if I find a better version of that. Crazy Horse Monument. Yeah, check this out. I mean, so explain to me this. Like, how did this take 50 years to do that? Right? 50 years to do that. And if I go over and I look up Mount Rushmore time. Okay, the Mount Rushmore timeline, it says that. So we're told that. I'll stop sharing that. I'll share this. So this is what the mainstream timeline is on Mount Rushmore. Oh shoot! Let me do that. Okay, so it says in 1923 they proposed the idea. In 1924, sculptor Gutzon Borglum is invited to assess the feasible project. 1927, construction officially began. And then the first face was done in 3 years. Wait, did I share the script on here? What is going on? No, I meant to. Dang this. Where is the script thing on here? Sorry. Okay. Yeah, so they finished sculpting George Washington in 3 years. 3 years. And then so it said in 1936, the face of Thomas Jefferson and Theodore Roosevelt were completed. The face of Abraham Lincoln was completed in 1837. So they did 4 faces in 10 years. 10 years. And it's taken them 50 years to do the carving of one face, Crazy Horse. That math don't math. That don't make any sense whatsoever, because that face, for one, that face looks very easily accessible. Let's go back to that picture. Look at that. Like you see, like that would have been way easier to carve that because you got all that stuff under it versus what Mount Rushmore looks like. Mount Rushmore is, yeah, these guys are like hanging from like a friggin' little crane or like a little swing stage to create this. Look at that. So they did these faces in 10 years. And again, look, there's nothing below them really to be able to, like, they had to hang over top of it to do that. It's a little weird that Abraham Lincoln, the side of his face looks like that. Kind of sus, right? Some don't. Some stinks about that story. Some stinks to high heaven. Okay, let's go back to the questions on the post. Okay, where are we at? Okay, bold as a line. JT, you're a real one. You're a real one, JT. Thanks for all you do and all the love to Jesus and the truth. Lately, I've fascinated by the American-Egypt connection. Is America the true land of milk and honey? God bless you, brother. You know, a lot of people say that. I'm still of the belief that it probably is the place they call Israel. It just doesn't look like, it doesn't resemble what the Bible describes, is because that place suffered the wrath of the Lamb. That place has been completely buried. Whatever that place was talked about as in the Exodus story about how great it was, it's not great anymore. But yeah, that place is probably, lots of the best stuff is completely buried. Maybe the mountains were literally made low. The valleys were filled in. It does not resemble what the Bible describes, and that's why. Because the real problem with the idea of that, if the biblical land is over in America, like, you have to put all the other geography of the Bible into that place. There you go, Bold Design. I'm glad you're here. Yeah, that my friend Luke Caverns, he once said this, is like, okay, so if Egypt was over in America, where is Greece? And I think that's a great question. It's like, so where's the Mediterranean? Like, where are all the other places that, especially in the book of Acts, when Paul's going to different places, like, how is he getting there? By boat. I think it makes more sense. And truth be told, yeah, like lots of those ancient Roman and Greek monuments and statues and temples and stuff are over in the place they tell us they are. So it's my conclusion that, yeah, that's more likely the truth. So maybe they don't lie about everything, but could be wrong. Okay. Kelly and Gabe 502 says, JT, why are we here rather than who do we descend from if we are living in Satan's short season? Well, I've always contended that not everyone dies during the Great Tribulation. Not everyone dies during the wrath of the Lamb. So it said that during the millennial reign, that Christ and the saints rule. Rule who? Well, if everyone was wiped out, there would be nobody to rule. So there was other nations here. And obviously the Bible does indicate that there's a time where that people would make these pilgrimages to keep these certain feasts. I think a lot of that stuff is symbolic. It's not actually literal, but it is talking about other nations being around at the time, because what Jesus's inheritance is supposed to be is the nations. So not everyone is killed. So I believe we are descendants of the rest of the people, not from the saints. Boogie to the 8. Boogie to the B. You got a little bit into it with Apollo. We had our disagreements, but sometimes I disagree, but I thought we kept everything cordial and cool. Renegade C 375. If possible, could you quickly explain how Matthew 24, Luke 21, and Mark 13 was happening, and they correlated it with Daniel prophecy you mentioned? Really quick on Apollo's. God bless you, JT. Well, that's I would just say that where it correlates is that, Jesus talks about this time of Jacob's trouble, and particularly where it correlates is when Jesus says that when you see the abomination of desolation as prophesied by the prophet Daniel, that's when you flee. So it's the Olivet Discourse. That's what he's referring to. Mark 13, Matthew 24, and Luke 21 are all the Olivet Discourse that Jesus is talking about all the signs that lead up to the destruction of the temple. Well, the Daniel prophecy is pointing to the second temple being destroyed. So that's particularly what Jesus is talking about. Now, obviously, when you get into Daniel 12, it talks about how the wise shine like stars. You can consider that when Jesus comes back, that when people look up in Luke 21, it says that look up because your redemption draws nigh. This is when God comes for his people. God delivers them from the evil that's there. But yeah, like not everything that Jesus mentioned is like a one-to-one comparison with the book of Daniel. It's particularly just about that time when there's going to be this time where the archangel Michael stands up, and then there's the nations are going to be allowed to trample on the holy city. There's going to be a certain amount of time between when the sacrifices are cut off and then the abomination happens and the desolation of Jerusalem happens. That's particularly what they're talking about. Ian James channel, I'd love to see a movie review of The Carpenter's Son. I've not seen The Carpenter's Son. Has anyone seen that? Is that a good movie? People in the chat, should I check out The Carpenter's Son? I've never heard of that movie. Maybe I should. I'm all about seeing some movies, so if that's a good one. A lot of biblical movies they're iffy for me. So tell me, I need another recommendation. Should I check that movie out? Where is it streaming? Can I watch it for free? Those kind of questions I need answers to. Okay, J-Win form consent. I just finished watching part 1 and part 2 that you did with Josh on Solomon's Ring. Great shows. Thank you. Why do the demons have to obey certain commands or words, or if you know their name, you have power over them? What is it with all the ritual aspects or what? Was trying to think human situations that would be compatible and have a hard time finding a good comparison for that. Would love to hear you guys go into depth on that. We know they are all liars and would say basically anything, and so would it be a person discern truth from them? Well, I think what we were saying is on the podcast, we kind of already addressed that a little bit, is that what that book is kind of showing you is that this ring had a sigil on it. It had a pent alpha or a pentagram on it. And that's why I think particularly that you see so often in movies when they're doing witchcraft, it involves a pentagram. Like this pentagram must have some kind of a power over them. The sigil means something. But I think it's kind of a situation where, when we have authority in the name of Jesus, right? So that's the important part. Like that's the important part about like that this authority that Christ has given us through the Father sending us the Holy Spirit is that we have authority in the name of the Son of God. So Jesus has all authority on heaven and earth. And so through saying that I've been sent by the King to tell you to flee, so you must obey, right? So, but you got to think like during the times of Solomon, this was pre-Christ giving that authority over to his brothers and sisters in Christ and God's children. So this was more like that there's a hierarchy in heaven and everything does work through authority, right? So certain angels had authority over these demons because they were like their fathers. They were in charge of them. So they're bound by this. And this must be just some kind of a heavenly hierarchy that they had to agree and they had to do things based on what their fathers had basically commanded them to do. So if I said, you have to do this in the name of your father, they listened. Now, why did they listen? I don't know. I guess the truth is nobody should ever be trying to mess around with that kind of stuff because ultimately the authority is ours in Christ. And it's not the authority to gain riches or get them to build our houses or do any kind of number of things that potentially an evil spirit could do. Because you're right. You mess around with that stuff. You can't trust them. You don't know what they're going to do. And what we're talking about in this book is kind of what where modern witchcraft comes from, because what we've tried to make a distinction between the Testament of Solomon, and then there's this other book called the Lower Keys of Solomon. Now, the Lower Keys of Solomon is like the how-to. It's basically like a witchcraft book. Don't do that. Don't mess with that book. Don't read that book. That is of the devil. Because it's kind of like that. It's kind of similar in a situation where in the book of Acts that the apostles are casting out demons and devils and doing miracles through the Holy Spirit. And then Simon the sorcerer says, hey, what I want is the ability to do that myself. Can I pay you enough money to do that? And then, of course, Peter rebukes him. So it's like your intent, like it's your why, like that they might look at a book where Solomon was doing something that wasn't necessarily witchcraft back then, but how it's used today is the intentions are not good. So I think through bad intentions, those demons can have power over you. And yeah, it's not something you want to mess with. And a very interesting comment right after that is Alan Antonio D3S. It's demons, bro. Right. You're right. Exactly. Okay. Now we're going on to Anaram77. What's your opinion about astrology? Not reading silly horoscopes, but interpreting the stars through a symbolic lens. Planets obviously are fake, but they are truly, in essence, about the light beings in which I believe their interactions' importance to us cannot be denied. Well, I would say that when you're talking about like, maybe it's just the way that we use the words. The Bible talks about astrology not in a good light, because astrology is the idea that you're interpreting omens and signs based on a lot about your own intentions, maybe about your own life, that's not good. But I read a really interesting book and I recommend it to you. I don't like the pretense to some of it because this guy's a glober, but there's a good book by Tim Warner called The Mystery of the Mazzaroth. And so the Mazzaroth is basically the Hebrew name for the zodiac. And it's all about how God wrote his story in the stars. You know, like when you read Psalm 19, it talks about how the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament is his handiwork. It says what day to day, night to night pours out speech, like no words are spoken. You know, there's tabernacles for the sun where the sun rests. And so basically it's saying like that the sun rests at a certain sign. You look up, you see this zodiac or Mazzaroth sign up there. Yeah, God established those things, and it's telling the story of Christ in the redemption of humanity. So, I mean, I think there's something to it. Obviously, the Bible points to stars, like in Revelation 12, it talks about great signs in the heavens. It talks about a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon at her feet. She's got a crown with 12 stars on it. It's talking about like the sign of Virgo. Even in Jeremiah, I think 31, it's talking about the branch. You know, Virgo holds a branch in her hand. Christ is the branch that's promised. So this was the sign that was in heaven when Christ was born. So there's something there, but I guess I would say beware. I said, you know, kind of research this stuff with caution, because that rabbit hole is a dangerous one. But there is a lot to it though. Okay, Travis Badtram, I say it. Just watched a short on YouTube looking like a clip from early 2000s. A lady saying that there was over 212 million people here, and was titled America Before Columbus. Supposedly some guy named Verrazano, from what I assume was a Catholic church, took record of the natives that were massacred. She was Black. Very interesting. Looking forward to diving deeper into finding out who she is and what she had to say. Well, I was saying, read American Antiquities and Discoveries of the West, because it's contending in that book that this mound culture does indicate that there was a lot more people here than before, like the Native Americans, like the American Indians that we know of. There's a story about there was lots of people here before. And a lot of those people are in those mounds. the remnants of those people. So yeah, I mean, this book is from 1883, or 1833. So we're talking about, even based on the story we're told, that Europeans are coming in here in the 1500s. And obviously this book is indicating there was people coming here for a lot longer. Even like the Norse people, the Vikings, they were coming here in like 500 years before Columbus. And there could have been people coming before that. I mean, this book contends that there was people coming to America directly after the separation with the Tower of Babel. So yeah, that's interesting. Definitely check that book out. And yeah, there's a lot to that, I believe. Are there any old maps for reference? Was there another question he asked before that? And Paul was asking me about Terra de Iso. I was just saying, like, that's not something I've really researched. I got to be honest. Like I said, I've said this before, that the Terra de Iso stuff is very interesting, but it's not something I necessarily subscribe to. I don't discourage people from looking into that more. So like when Apollo asked me about that that's not my channel's research. So like if he wants to talk to somebody, it's not me about that. So I wasn't trying to be rude. I was just trying to say like that I'm not going to speak about things I don't really know or I haven't researched. Okay, C. Davis. Is that C. Davis? Yeah, I think it is. On a scale of 1 to 10, how sure are you that we are living in the little season? 1 is least confident. Do you think it's possible we're missing something major that would connect a lot of dots together? I feel like we need to keep thinking outside the box and not get set into our certain belief systems about the little season. I have a feeling we're still missing something right in front of our faces that's huge. I would say that on a scale of, okay, if I'm going to be perfectly honest today, I would say that I wanted to say 9, but maybe I'll say 8. Pretty sure. But I mean, yeah, there's lots of things that we don't have figured out. Lots of things. That's not something, I mean, I would love to be totally sure, but I mean, I think that a lot of this research should come with a lot of humility because, ultimately our source is this is Septuagint, but is the Bible. So we can't necessarily say that the Bible certainly seems to indicate that we are based on its internal timeline. But outside that, the evidence that we have is cataclysmic evidence. We have evidence of anomalies in history. We have lots of evidence of buildings that don't make sense. But yeah, I would say that when it comes down to like, we have to rely on history, even parts of history. So yeah, there's lots of things that are really hard to like really stand firm on other than God's word. So I would say that I am pretty sure, but I can't say I'm 100% sure. 8, I'll say 9. That was my first answer. I'm a 9. Okay. Hannah O'Connor, best resources for true history, any sources a kid could read to get a broader perspective. First step is diving into flat earth, podcast, book, etc. Oh gosh, does anybody in the audience have a good answer for that question? Like true history. Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to, I mean, the first thing is the Bible. Read the Bible over and over again. Outside of that, I don't know, especially for a kid. You guys got any good answers? I got to be honest. I don't. This kind of research, I've learned mostly through Bible 1, and then after that was probably podcast 2, and then it was TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and then it was eventually like little pieces of this puzzle, and then I read more, and then I continue to kind of learn more. And I'm sorry if that's not a great answer for you, but yeah, that's the truth though. Truth and Song, God bless you. Thank you so much. Love the Q&A sessions, JT. Okay, I'm powering through this. I'm going to see if I can get through this. How many questions I got? Oh, I got a lot still. I shouldn't have looked. Should not have looked. Okay, where we at? Okay, so living in the little season. Hey JT, how did you get started making content and how do you do it? Do you make scripts or something? Just ask the Holy Spirit to lead you. Also, what's the easiest way you feel like to explain the little season to other believers? What's the worst response you got? Most people aren't receptive when I try. Thanks, JT. Okay, so that's a few questions. Should I grant him more than one question? Okay, first answer the question. I got into doing this because I've told this testimony before. I felt really compelled because I did feel like that we were like living in the end times in 2021. So that caused me to really seek God hard. And then God basically pulled at my heart to start talking about things on social media. First to my friends, not trying to go viral, just doing stuff. But then I felt like led because there was like this Daniel looking statue in front of the UN. And I felt like I had to show people and kind of show them what the scriptures said versus what the statue looked like. And then after that, it just felt like that video did pretty well. And my brother said, hey, you should make a series of videos like that. And so I made like 3 or 4 more. And then before you know it, I was just making videos about the things that I thought were interesting. So it was sort of like at the beginning, it was just like it felt like the Spirit was leading me to step out of my comfort zone and to do something. And then what I found interesting, I just decided to talk about it. I mean, it started to be fun. I mean, it started to be fun once people started to like my videos. And then, so when it comes out to today, I've done both where I've made scripts for videos, but for the majority of the time, you can tell based on the way I do my live streams, it's a little bit fly by the seat of your pants. It'll be like, I kind of know what I want to say, and I would kind of record myself saying it several different ways and try to get like something that sounded smooth and maybe satirical and funny. And I just kind of just say the things over and over again. But I have done videos where I made scripts, but that's really not my bag, not altogether. Okay, so the other question was, what's the easiest way to explain the little season to other believers? I think the first one is just to kind of say, it's like, just talk about the Olivet Discourse. It's like, man, Jesus really sounded like he was coming back then. It's like, what do you think about that? What do you think about the idea that why do we need a third temple? Because, Matthew 24 is about the destruction of the second temple. So why do we need a new one? I mean, like, if you think there's a new temple coming, like, why doesn't the Bible ever talk about it? I think those are the things for believers. You kind of just have to question, like, it is kind of weird that Jesus said that some of you standing here won't taste death until you see the Son of Man coming into his kingdom. You really think he's talking about the transfiguration? It's like 6 days later. So like, why would he say that when none of them would be dead when he showed them himself coming into his kingdom? Also, he mentioned the holy angels were going to be there, and there was no angels there. Isn't it weird that the book of Revelation says that John should not seal up this prophecy because the time is at hand, and Daniel was told to seal up the prophecy because the time was not at hand? That's weird, right? That's how I would do it. And I would say, hey, did you know that those 7 churches that in the book of Revelation, did you know all those places had to be excavated? That there's not really any old churches that are connected to the first century? It's kind of weird that Jesus was telling all them that they were going to see all these things that were going to happen. And they got buried under the ground. Those are the things. Those are the things I would probably suggest to them. And the worst response I ever got was, you're a heretic. You're a heretic. You're a liar. You were sent by the devil. You are blaspheming the Holy Spirit and all this stuff. I've heard some bad things, but typically that's other content creators coming at us. I've never had anyone personally tell me that. But it's not also something I share with everybody. Of course, I've got a pretty big platform, so a lot of people already know what I talk about, so they ask questions to me. And I've had people who have unfriended me, unfollowed me. I've had people in my personal sphere that don't talk to me anymore about stuff like that. But I also have friends that disagree, and we just don't talk about it. And they don't seem like they think that I'm a heretic, but maybe, you'd have to ask them. Okay, Judah 403. I had this thought the other day about the Mandela effect. If the Mandela effect is less of an issue of poor memory and actually a psychological experiment to attempt to erase something in the past, could 1,000-year reign be the largest Mandela effect ever performed? Are there any connections you might have with that idea? Obviously, they can't erase a shred of evidence, but they would have had all the power to erase everyone who bore witness to every account that referenced it. Ooh, that's a pretty interesting idea. You know, again, this is spoilers for the upcoming JT's mixtape that should be available on the Patreon on Friday. I talked about this connection I saw with the newest Spider-Man movie, No Way Home. And so in that movie, it shows this weird image of the Statue of Liberty. Spider-Man calls it the place of second chances. We often reference the Statue of Liberty as maybe a sign that Satan has been loosed. It looks like Lucifer. It looks like Apollo. It's got a chain around its ankle, blah, blah, blah. Everybody knows that in this audience. But the interesting part about that, the end of that movie, is that Doctor Strange casts a spell to make everyone on Earth forget that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. So like he kind of like wipes everyone's memory at the end. Right. So I was like, what if that's what they're showing? What if that's symbolic of, what if that is like a mass Mandela effect, like giant witchcraft, like on a worldwide scale? Maybe. I've never really connected that with the Mandela effect, but that would be an incredible Mandela effect. That would be like, but see, the Mandela effect would be like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's a good call. I'll have to float that with Demon Racers and Aaron. Okay. Maiko, Mikuku, sorry, Makoku, 97. Hey, JT, do you have a movie recommendation list? Oh gosh, man. I've seen so many movies. The one I always point to a lot in this is The Prestige. I think that's a really interesting one when it comes to stuff. Of course, The Lord of the Rings. I mean, The Lord of the Rings are awesome. Got to watch those movies. I talk about them all the time. The Matrix. I mean, probably not many movies that aren't kind of mainstream. Do I have any kind of off the wall ones? Maybe I need to start to put together a list of movies that have. Man, that would take a long time. Because every movie that I watch, I see something in them. I should do that. At some point. I should take more notes. No, you're good living in the little season. No problem. That's what this is for. Okay, Be Mary 94. How is your health journey going? I would say that it's up and down. I would say that I got sick earlier this week, so praise God that I feel well enough to record JT's mixtape yesterday and to be on with you guys today. You probably can hear in my throat that I'm a little bit hoarse, but I've been trying to put off like my diet, but when I got back from Arizona, I started getting back on top of it. And so, I tried to stay consistent with weight training. So I lift weights 4 days a week, at least, and typically 4 days a week. And my diet it's a little bit hit or miss. I was much better when I used to cycle and run because I was way more consistent the way I trained. So I ate a certain way, I drank fluids a certain way. But it's harder when you're doing content creation because it's not my schedule is how I want it to be, but that obviously there's pluses and negatives. Sometimes when you have like a day job, like you're forced to like work out certain times, maybe before work or after work. Like for me, it's harder because sometimes I don't feel like eating in the morning, and then I don't eat. I'm not eating as consistently. I'm not drinking as consistently, and I had a season probably because I got married and stuff, and I was traveling. I was not as disciplined with the diet. I'm trying to be more disciplined. So like I said, it's been about a week and a half that I've been trying to be steady with the diet. So I feel like I'm getting a little bit leaner, but I got a ways to go. But thank you for asking. Ashley Houston 202 or 2202. You should have John Pounders on. Yeah, I need to have John Pounders back on. I should have hit him up today, but I kind of wanted to do this solo. But yeah, I would love to have John Pounders back on. John Pounders is great. I've really enjoyed coming to know him and calling him a friend. Okay. It's a J-Win formed consent. If you could recommend just one video, which would you recommend for as the quintessential video that covers the little season well? What would you share with other people? I think going back to the very first podcast I ever did with this, I did with Alpha Talks, and it was the first Decoding. I want to say it was like Decoding Babylon, like 29, maybe. I hesitate to say, but it was the very first one I did with Alpha Talks. And because I asked a lot of questions and Alpha Talks laid it out pretty well. I think that's a pretty good introductory to the little season. Now, I know that one I just collaborated with Apollo the First, and we did another podcast. But the last podcast, the very first one I did with him, he asked me a lot from like a biblical perspective. And I thought that he challenged me enough. And luckily, when he looked things up that I said, it ended up being that I was correct. So those two podcasts would probably be good ones. Okay, Brown Knight 2208. Would you do a divine feminine podcast? No one would touch this subject. I guess it depends what you mean about that. I mean, I've mentioned the divine feminine. I mean, I know we often talk about that is kind of an inversion. We even know like the Orthodox and the Catholics kind of view Mary as some kind of divine feminine. We don't really believe that. I don't believe that. But yeah, it does seem like from what I've learned, it almost feels like in this little season, the devil has almost framed himself more like the Statue of Liberty, more like a divine feminine. It's kind of like this divine feminine energy is like is literally demonic. This Jezebel spirit is the devil's spirit. So it's like we think he's a man, but he's actually pretending to be some woman. So maybe that's the truth, is that the woman, we're looking for a man to be the devil, but it's actually a woman. Think about like in Ghostbusters when Gozer's revealed at the end and Winston Zeddemore says, I thought Gozer was a man. And he was like, because he sees this woman and he's like, it's whatever it wants to be. I think that might be the devil. That might be what the devil's doing. So I guess we'd have to pinpoint exactly what you mean if we could do a deeper dive into that. Okay, Simon Price, 2845. I have a question. I almost ran over somebody who walked out in front of my car looking in a world of their own with headphones on and listening to music. I've noticed a lot of people who have headphones on just walk across the road like NPC zombies. Is this science or demonic? Well, I think it's clearly a situation where the enemy wants to distract you. So that's a great way to do it. I mean, even we have like our own kids who want to walk down the stairs watching their phone or looking at a tablet. And you're like, hey, dummy, you're going to fall down the stairs. I mean, I think that is one of the devil's greatest tools, is to get us distracted. And yeah, that could be like that's symbolic of like how it's obviously clearly just so obvious to be dangerous to be distracted when you're walking around traffic. But like that could be symbolic of how we operate in this world as being distracted when there are many dangers around us. So yeah, science, demonic, both, and turns us into zombies. Correct. Okay, what do you think? The more AI takes control of people and behind this will no longer be blamed when there are mass casualties, depopulation, but now things can be blamed on computers, demonic entities through black screens, and the AI controlling the media will spin it into who knows what. Most people follow the programming but never continue to search for the truth. What do you think is the purpose of AI? Is it something new or is it something ancient? Is the artificial really artificial or is it by design? Don't take your eye off the ball. Great questions. Yeah, I mean, I would say that I think that maybe the technology, maybe the ideas for this programming probably is from the fallen. It's like watcher technology. Now, how old is it? I mean, I don't have any real evidence that it's older than we're told it is. I mean, I know it's older than when it was first rolled out to the public, very clearly. They don't give anything to us first. So they've had it for a while before it was ever given to us. But I think ultimately it's people who are in charge of it. And I think that the elites, the controllers, if you will, they want AI to replace us. So absolutely, I think that that's the main goal of it is to put people out of jobs. You know, that if you think about those statues, the Georgia Guidestones, it was all about population control. They want less of us, but they need people to do certain jobs. So if they can get AI to do those jobs, well, that will help promote their plan, their design. So yeah, I mean, of course, there are all these seeds planted in movies like The Terminator and The Matrix where eventually it turns on people. But I think, truth be told, it's already turned on people. So I think people are controlling it, but the ideas came from the fallen. What is the best part of Sedona, says Hugh Legan? Is that right? Hugh Legan? Hugh Egan? Sorry. The best part of it is, of course, all the great, beautiful places to hike. It's gorgeous. I mean, Sedona is absolutely amazing. Cathedral Rock is probably, at least from my experience, I've only really hiked there twice. The top of Cathedral Rock is pretty awesome. It's not overly difficult to get up to the top. It's not easy either. I think that if you get to the top of Cathedral Rock, look around, man. But I'm sure like you could probably ask Ron better than me because he's a native Arizonan and he knows so many places about that place that are not the typical like must-see tourist destinations. But Sedona is, if you get a chance, go. Ashley Easton, 2202. Honesty, JT. I believe it all, but I'm struggling with Jesus, where Jesus is right now. What is he doing and what power are we supposed to suppressing? And what power are they suppressing us from? Like, I feel like if Jesus was reigning on earth right now, because it says he will touch down and his feet will be in the sand, like, why isn't he helping us more? But then I had more experience where I know it was Jesus himself who pulled me out from under a truck, and I'm just confused, but my eyes are only on him. There's a question in there somewhere. Well, I think that I had somebody ask me this on Instagram today, and they said, where does the Bible say that Jesus leaves during the little season? I said, the truth is, like, where does it say he's here during the little season? I mean, it doesn't say that. I mean, I think that Jesus told the apostles, he says, blessed you who have seen and believed, but more blessed is those who have seen or have not seen and have believed. So we're saved by faith in Christ. And the whole gospel is basically like you're hoping for this kingdom that you cannot perceive today. So I think it's like the antithesis is that you can see and you can experience and you can see all the things. So the fact that Jesus is in a place that we cannot see and can't get to is about walking in faith. I mean, like that's literally like, that's what we're here to do. I mean, so, I mean, at the end of the day, like this place is rough and we could not make it without God's grace, but we need to kind of look at other people. I mean, because I know that we're all dealing with difficult things, but what helps me the most is taking myself outside of myself and saying, hey, you know what? My problems are not as big as this person right here. Or maybe I can't fix my problems today, but I can try to help my brother, my sister out over here. That's what we're here for. And then when you start focusing on other people's problems, your problems seem smaller. And so that is exactly how God shows, or that's how you show God you love him, is by loving the people around you. I mean, it's like, I don't know if that's the answer you want, but I believe that is the answer, is that this place is difficult. And we can't do it without God, but we can't do it without each other either. So God is blessing each of us through each other. As you guys are blessing me for being here, I hope I'm blessing you guys by doing these live streaming, these podcasts. You know, there's a mutual beneficial relationship between each other, building up each other's faith. And We have faith in the hope that we cannot see, not the things that we can see. Hopefully that answers your question. King Mac 305. What's your thoughts on the mud floods happening due to the devil being released and the thoughts of a rapture already taking place? That was my initial thought, that the mud flood was caused by some kind of event like Emergence Day. And I think that's still possible. But I think based on when we started to go down the Gunnar Heinsohn research, he was already showing things that were buried from a long time ago. So again, like examples like Rome, maybe Easter Island, all around the world, all around the whole realm, things have already been buried. So there was certainly during the catastrophe that was potentially in the first century, right after the times of the destruction of Jerusalem, there was a mud flood of sorts at that time. Now, has there been one since then? Well, I mean, we've seen recent examples of like regional mud flooding in places. Like that's happened. We've shown videos on JT's mixtape about that. Now, when you get to like the worldwide stuff, it's harder to say. I mean, obviously, earthquakes could cause something like a mud flood. A tidal wave could cause a mud flood, tsunamis, all that stuff. So the truth is, did the devil come out with a bang or was it like a whisper? See, I'm more inclined now to think it was more like a whisper. It was more like in The Lord of the Rings. It was more like when, in Harry Potter, when Voldemort's back. It's like there's rumors that he's back. It's like the devil's not, he wasn't like powerful enough to really announce his presence. Like he kind of wanted to creep out. He wanted to plant the seeds that to his minions that he was back. And they were going to gain strength and take over this place. I think it was probably more like that. But that's my opinion. Okay. Chet Stedman, BV7NG. What's the map that's behind your studio? This map right here. This map over here. I'm actually not even sure where my wife got it from. This was like a thing she got probably in kind of like, I don't know if it was like a Hobby Lobby or something like that. It was one of these, it's kind of just a cool decoration piece. And she was going to throw it in the trash. But it has like two kind of, you can only see one of them, but you kind of see there's another one up here too. It's kind of showing like two circular maps. And, it's showing most of the realm. It does have Tartaria on it. It was kind of cool. But she was going to throw it in the trash. And I said, oh, wait a minute. That would make a great backdrop for my my podcast or my videos that I was doing. So she built all this wood stuff under it though. So I really wish I could find to maybe get something else like that, because I do think it looks real cool. It's very unique, but hopefully that answers your question. It's just a regular map, but I mean, it doesn't say like who the cartographer was. It doesn't say what year, unfortunately. Man, you know what? This is much longer than I was planning on going, but I'm gonna power through and we're gonna get through all these questions. Okay, Duke City 6-string. Have you ever looked at electric guitar pedals? There's some interesting artwork and names on so many. Makes wonder, tone, frequency, and music created. Praise God. Thanks, Joe. I have not. You know what? That would be a great question for Aaron, because he is the music man of the podcast. But no, I'm sure that we talked about that on the last podcast. Again, that's coming out on Friday over on Patreon. Will be on the general podcast everywhere else on Monday. But yeah, that we talked about music and its influence on people, and it's kind of almost disarming people for like messages to go in. So yeah, I'm sure there's something there. Okay, Heather Sexton, I have a question that's been bothering me about baptisms. Do you still need a water baptism if Jesus baptized by the blood? And are we being poisoned in the food to keep us from having longer lives like in biblical times? I think that the conditions were different. Obviously, the environment was probably much more healthy back in the day. I think that we were more genetically pure when we were connected closer to Adam. And yes, what we eat, what we drink, the air we breathe, the soil that we're around, I mean, I'm sure that affects our lifetimes that are shorter. But yeah, I would say that there's been more genetic corruption has increased throughout these thousands and thousands of years. So I think that's the main reason we don't live as long. I think before the flood too, a lot of people believe before the waters of the firmament were opened up, that maybe the way the environment was more, it was more supportive of long lives and bigger flora and fauna. Now, the questions about baptism. Well, the truth is, the Bible doesn't explicitly say it's a salvation thing to get water baptism, but Jesus does go tell the apostles to baptize people. You know, Peter tells about baptism too. So baptism is kind of like is declaring to the world that you are Christ, that the person you were has died and you've rose again in Christ. So the truth is kind of like, where is the salvation line in that? All I know is the book, Jesus tells people to get baptized. He tells the apostles to baptize people. It also says that, again, the apostles tell people to be baptized. So if you don't get baptized, I mean, the real question is why not? You know, it says that you should. Well, you get baptized. Tube Trotter says baptism in the Holy Spirit, true, but they were baptizing people in water. I mean, obviously, there's a story in the book of Acts about Philip baptizing the Ethiopian eunuch. So he didn't say he didn't need to be baptized. He baptized him. So I'd encourage people to get baptized. And I don't think, like, if you got sprinkled on, like you got christened as a child, in a Catholic church, I don't think that really counts. It's a conscious decision that you want to declare that you're Christ. And I think you should do it. Okay. Squirrel, is that how you say it? Do you have other Bible verses besides the one in Revelation 20 about the little season? I believe that Isaiah, which refers to many of the books of the Bible that exist in the 66 books that are canonized, the last verse in the chapter, I believe, is about the little season. Isaiah 64:24. And they shall go forth, look upon the corpses of the men who had transgressed against me. For the worm does not die, and their fire is not quenched. They shall be in abhorrence in the flesh, in all flesh. Yeah, I mean, I think that sounds like after the Battle of Armageddon. I honestly, besides Revelation 20, as far as I know, I have not seen anything that really gives any more detail about the little season. I wish there was. I mean, is that possibly something that there is an apocryphal book that talks more about it? Maybe. But as far as like the 66 books that are in the Masoretic Bibles, I don't know. The Protestant Bibles, I don't think it talks about it more. Okay. Number one truther. Question. I know you speak about no rapture, and I have been trying to get there. I do believe we are in the little season, but how would you explain 1 Thessalonians 4:16 and 17, which talks about being caught up? See, I'm not saying like that there wasn't a rapture. I'm saying that there absolutely could have been one, because that certainly sounds like one. But there is things that do sound like they contradict a little bit. Even Paul says that like a seed has to go into the earth and die before it comes out and sprouts and becomes something new. So it's kind of like the idea that like without a death, is there a resurrection? I mean, when Jesus talks about people, he's saying it's like on the last day, I'll raise them up. Like, and he's talking about a resurrection. I mean, so from our understanding, like to be resurrected is to have died and then to be raised again. Now, when it gets into 1 Thessalonians 4:16 and 17, I know what it says. Those who are alive and remain will be caught up in the clouds and be once forever with Christ Jesus. That sounds like a rapture. So I agree with you. It does sound like one. It does sound like living people being caught up. So if that is what Paul is trying to indicate, he's the only one who talks about that, which I think it's interesting. I think that what's interesting is in the book of Revelation, you can't point to a rapture in the book of Revelation. I think that's weird. I think it's weird that it's not in there. But I would not argue with somebody who believes that Paul is talking about a rapture, because that's what he seems to indicate. But we do know when Jesus talks about when two are grinding at a mill, one is taken, one is left. Two are in a bed, one's taken, one's left. Two are in a field, one's taken and one's left. When the apostles ask him where they're taken, he says he takes them to where the corpses are, or where the vultures and the eagles are, where the corpses lie. So he's not actually taking them to a place that's good. So it does seem like that there's a rapture of evil in what Jesus is talking about. You know, when he's talking about the thief in the night story, it's not like a good thing. He's not like talking about taking people to heaven. He's taking people to be chopped up and eaten by birds. But that being said, I would not argue with somebody who says that there was a rapture, but that's how I'd use that phrase, was a rapture. If there was a rapture, I believe it's already happened. Okay, Ryan for Jesus. Hey, I've noticed you mentioned KJV was mentioning Masoretic text translation. It was my understanding that the KJV didn't come from the Masoretic. Could you clarify on that? Thanks, JT. Yes, absolutely. Every Protestant Bible, all the English translations of the Bible are, all the Protestant ones anyways, they are all based on the Masoretic text. And so I think that the Catholic Bibles were translated on with the Latin Vulgate, which were also used the scriptures from the Jews to get the Old Testament. So I want to say that the Orthodox Bible, the Ethiopian Bible, I guess it's Ethiopian Orthodox Bible, but like all the Orthodox Bibles, I believe are based on the Septuagint, but all the Protestant Bibles are actually using the Masoretic text, which I think has lots of errors in it. So it's crazy. Lots of people want to argue KJV only, but they have not researched about the errors in the Masoretic text. I would say, get you one of these. Get you one of these. I mean, just read both of them. I mean, we've got our whole lives to read the Bible, right? Read lots of translations, but I would encourage people, get the Septuagint. I would say that this is the version of the Old Testament that the apostles and Jesus himself are quoting. So if they quoted it, it's good enough for them, good enough for me. Okay, we're coming to the end of the list. Okay, so Mark Bone 1615. Ever since the alien stuff has come out, I'm getting a lot of crap popping up about the Knights Templar, suggesting aliens are real. And Jesus married Mary Magdalene. Bunch of crap from supposed lost Templar jar. Wish y'all would discuss it. Oh, yeah, I mean, of course, the Da Vinci Code is really about that, is that what the Templars actually believed that the Holy Grail was not a cup. It was like, so the idea is that, like in the Indiana Jones version of it, is like this cup caught the blood of Christ, right? So it's a vessel carrying Jesus' blood. But that's actually not what it's actually, that's kind of an esoteric thing. What the Templars actually believe is the vessel that carried Christ's blood was a kid. Now that's heretical. That is not true. But it's very similar to the belief of kind of like the Judaizers and, you know, the people who believe in the Kabbalah and whatever version of Judaism they believe. They believe the Mashiach is to come, and they believe he's in the line of David. But the truth is, the last person who could prove they were in the line of David was Jesus himself. So those temple records with the genealogy in them, they were all destroyed in 70 AD. So yeah, I don't know how that fits with aliens, but yeah, the Da Vinci Code stuff obviously is false. It's nonsense. Yeah, all that stuff is garbage. Of course, these people are liars. These people are Gnostics. These people believe knowledge is power. So they really don't want you to have the full truth. So they never tell you anyway. So yeah, that's clearly a deception for sure. Okay. So where are we at now? Okay, we are Billy Big Time. Any chance you can release Ancient Angels for free viewing for a limited time only? Either way, I can't wait to watch it at some point. Appreciate everything. God bless. You know, Brian is actually the man to ask about that. Brian is the one who has the keys to Ancient Angels. I think at this point, I've kind of encouraged him to at some point just to put it up on YouTube for free at this point, because we made that movie. Gosh, it's been about 3 years ago now. Is it 2.5 years, maybe? Like 2.5 years old. So some of the stuff, like looking back at some of the stuff I said, we still had kind of a premillennial view when we made that movie. So some of the stuff I said in that movie, I don't really believe anymore. I think still it's a very good Nephilim, Enoch, Genesis 6 101 discussion in that video for a lot of people who don't know that stuff. It is good. So yeah, hit Brian up and say, JT said he would be fine for releasing it on YouTube if you were, and we could have it up on his channel. But I think he's had this goal to get it up on Amazon Prime. He says that it's going to happen one day, but it has not happened yet. It would be cool if it was on Amazon Prime. It would make it look more professional, but yeah. Maybe I'll talk to him again about that. Okay. Yo says, do you think Jesus resurrected on Sunday first or Saturday the 7th day? Well, he was raised on the third day. And so he said 3 days and 3 nights in the tomb. So it's like so it's 3 days, 3 nights. Well, it said he was resurrected. I think he likely resurrected on Sunday when it was still dark. Like, you know what I'm saying? It was past midnight, because that's how they describe days and nights in the Bible. A day is just the daytime and the night is the nighttime. So like a day and night are different. 3 days, 3 nights. So obviously we know the Bible says that when they went to the tomb on the first day of the week, the stone was already rolled away. So likely it was, I'm guessing, this is my thought, it makes sense, it was like right at dawn on Sunday. Okay, what 2100 question, why are there no books of Jesus teaching to Mary Magdalene or other women? Because they're supposed to ask their husbands the truth about that. No, I mean, well, Jesus is teaching lots of people at a time. Obviously, there's a multitude of people. Obviously, when he gives the Sermon on the Mount, he's giving a sermon to lots of people. When he's feeding the multitudes, they describe how many men are there, but lots of people say that they're not counting women and children. So Jesus is teaching to everyone. So they're there. I mean, there's obviously the women were the only people there at the cross, I think, other than John. So yeah, the women were around all the time. They were teaching, but it doesn't say Jesus was specifically teaching this one woman, even though they were there being taught just like the apostles. Okay, Boogie to the B. When are you going to talk about the Isle of Saints in depth? Are you talking about Terra de Isos? I don't know. I mean, like I said, I haven't really looked into that too much. Maybe I should look further. Just haven't done it yet. Okay. Dogboxer77. Assuming we're in the little season, I think the Church of Thyatira was the Catholic Church in Revelations. If it was, you figure Satan took over in 1776, like, how did we end up with the Vatican where the Catholic come from originally? Was it ever the true church? So many questions. Well, obviously, historically, there was schisms in the church. Obviously, you had the Catholic Church broke apart with what you became the Orthodox Church. The Orthodox Church claims to be the original true one. The Catholic one claims to be the original true one. And then you have the Protestant Reformation, where you have the Protestant Church breaks away from the Catholic Church. So that happened. But I mean, it makes sense that, it sort of makes sense altogether that what you have, when you have on earth, you still have fallible people and you still have people arguing over doctrine. You have pride and you have people that are not correct. So even there's a story where was it Barnabas and Paul kind of decide to go separate ways. So I guess the truth is the Bible kind of indicates that neither of them are necessarily wrong, but they could not work together anymore. Now, did God really intend to have like one true church? I mean, probably, but I guess the truth is like, well, how is that possible with flawed men and a whole world? I mean, difficult questions to ask. Okay, last question here. Man, we're coming up on 3 hours, aren't we? Dang. Okay, do you know anyone that is looking into music history through the Little C's and Tartaria lens? I've had people say that Mozart wasn't one person, but a conglomeration of composers, much like as it appears Shakespeare was as a writer. I believe to be true due to the amount of works credited to him and inconsistencies in his original scores. We've always been told Cholsanovsky's 1812 overture was an homage to the war in the States, but now I'm having my doubts about that story. My hunch is 1812 is a different focal point for the dedication. As always, thanks for what you do, JT. Longtime listener, first time caller. Oh, and that was Jasny 9117. That's a great question. I want to say that I have not looked into that, but I would say that sort of fits with this idea that you have lots of great men and women are credited with so many things. Like Nikola Tesla is a good example of that, where a lot of people say that as many inventions that were supposedly credited to Tesla, it really makes no logical sense that he actually could do that by one person doing that. You know, you kind of wonder about that. Like we talk about like Michelangelo. Like Michelangelo is credited with so many great works of art, like a guy like Leonardo da Vinci. Is it possible that like Michelangelo is like somebody attributing almost to the Archangel Michael all these great works of art because they're almost inhuman how incredible they are? It could be. I mean, like I said, it could be just like a stand-in for like, we really don't know who did it, so we're going to just make a story about one guy, because history has to have an answer about who did these things. So maybe that's what's happening here, is that yes, you have all these great works of music and somebody says, well, who did it? And then some guy just said it was Beethoven. And then everyone said, okay, or Mozart, whatever, you know, Mozart or Beethoven. And they say, yeah, this guy did all those things. Maybe it was a situation where one of these guys discovered old music and started to make his own versions of it and took credit for it. You know, I think that's an example of like, maybe that's what Nikola Tesla did, is that he found old inventions and he patented other people's stuff, or he reverse engineered stuff. So what if that's the case with these famous composers? I don't know, because I haven't researched it, but that is a great question. And man, that was, I need some water. That was, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I probably shouldn't have showed so many videos. Like I honestly thought I wasn't going to go through all of them, but I did. And I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, this live stream, because dang, this was a long one for me to do solo, especially after being sick. But God gave me strength. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Appreciate you guys being here. Oh no, and I mentioned this on the podcast for this coming up, the upcoming JT's mixtape, that I've made a decision where I'm going to now start to put, if you like to listen to these podcasts on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, I'm now going to start putting them on the audio podcast the day they premiere on JT, like on the YouTube channel. So if you like to listen, you can listen many times before they're available to watch. I think watching them is the best way to do it. But if you'd like to listen, you'd like to drive on your commute, I'm going to have them all up the same day. So if you want to listen to JT's mixtape this Monday, you'll be able to listen to it before you can watch the premiere on YouTube. But again, JT's mixtape, you probably want to watch it. But anyways, guys, I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. Again, if you want to support this podcast, check out Modern Roots Life, the sponsor of this podcast. Check out Josh's stuff. Josh is great. All natural health supplements. Also, if you want to support this podcast, again, I've plugged the Patreon a lot. Patreon's a great place to do it. You get stuff early and uncensored. Check it out over there. I got tank tops in my store now. You can get hats still too. You can get the t-shirts too, but this is not a t-shirt, but it's just a t-shirt. But regardless, guys, I really appreciate you guys being here. Guys, if you guys have watched to the end, you guys have probably already subscribed, but if you have not, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Comment for more, all the things that all of us podcasters have to say. But I appreciate you guys a lot. I appreciate you guys all hanging out with me all the way to the end. We had almost 500 people in here. That's pretty good for the one-man show over here. I love you guys, and I'm going to go get some rest and maybe get some dinner. Love you guys. See y'all next time. I think I'm going to play. Should I play us out with an outro? Let's do that. Actually, no, I'm going to play my JT's mixtape again. Let's do this.
JT's mixtape. Now I show about history, faith, and truth, with the sound and the conversation we've never heard before. JT's mixtape. Now there's a podcast that has exactly what we've been looking for JT created mixtape for us. Ba-da-ba-ba.